Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for 40K from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 103, and we're going to talk all about the new 40K rumors and release leaks and all that good stuff. And we're also going to pimp all of the remaining 7th edition lists that we had. We're going to quickly pimp those to just, let those people get their advice that they emailed us for, and sorry it took us so long, but we've been promising it, so it's going to happen.
Yep.
As usual, I'm your host, Chris, at CanHammer Chris on Twitter, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr.
Logan, CanHammer Logan on Twitter.
And our third wheel, Mr. Actually, that's
Darren,
degrading. Is third wheel degrading? No, it's not degrading, is it? And
depends how many wheels there are in total.
Yeah. And our special guest for the evening, we have...
Scary. You can find me on any social media at Scardcast.
Do you want to do it for the people?
What? Sorry.
The Dark.
The Dark Kin.
Oh, well, we'll have to be ready for that. I don't think you'll handle it.
We'll get there when we get
So
there.
I randomly sneak. I don't know, because I think you noticed once. I've randomly snuck that into 2 or 3 episodes, just like.
I did. There was the one when you guys were talking about some of the stuff for the CanHammer team stuff, which was fun too.
Yep.
And I appreciated the shout out there. So.
Right, so you're the host of Scardcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon, correct?
Correct. I basically focus mostly on content creation that has to do pretty much exclusively with Dark Eldar, but I do play some Tomb Kings, and I've been doing a lot of Shadow War stuff lately, and I do a combination of things like tactical videos, battle reports, and I do a live stream every week. All in all, it's mostly a hobby for me, and I just really enjoy creating content that people enjoy to watch and listen.
Right on. So, if you're new to the stream, this is our bi-weekly kind of 40K/AOS radio talk show that we do, where we just discuss all the upcoming things and BS. If you want more information about CanHammer, it's www.canhammer.ca. We also have a YouTube channel where we do battle reports and all kinds of good stuff, and you can hear Darren's deep thought. If you want to support us, you can check us out on Patreon as well, patreon.com/CanHammer. Okay, so... since normally we would do a interview, but since Scary's been on the show before, you guys should all be really familiar with him. So we'll move on to interesting hobby progress. So Darren, any interesting hobby progress?
Yeah, I've been working on my Forge World Bonanza. I actually only half of it because there's just so much of it.
What's the bonanza about that? I don't understand.
No, it's just like, yeah, I went a bit crazy at Forge World, mostly to get free shipping. You have to get like 250 pounds or something to get free shipping, right? Doesn't seem worthwhile to pay 40 pounds for shipping.
Especially
for
when
one thing.
When their dollar is like double ours, right? Oh.
Exactly. So I'm like, I gotta get more to get free shipping. So I ended up buying like a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, so I had been working on a Colossal Squig and a Dread Maw, but mostly all my time's been spent on a Magma Dragon. And in fact, most of my time has been spent on the base of the Magma Dragon. Been trying to perfect this lava thing.
So that was kind of interesting. So why don't you explain your lava base? Because there's been a lot of interesting feedback on Facebook about that.
Yeah, so what I've been trying to do was I had like cork as rocks, and then I painted in between the cork as lava. But I was not happy with how that turned out, and I wanted it to be more 3D than that. Yeah. So if I'm looking at sort of source material for lava, it often has like molten bits in it that kind of look like black, dark rock. Yep. And so I actually spent a crazy, stupid amount of time researching this. And there's 2 sources of how to get that kind of cracked rock look. One is actually Warhammer TV, like a year ago. Duncan did a video which basically involved using Martian iron earth, so that self-cracking texture paint. Yeah. And what he does is you just slather it on super thick, you blow dry it so it dries extra fast, and then it kind of super cracks, and then you paint, red, orange, yellow, white underneath it, and then it shows through the cracks.
So you would actually paint the red, yellow, and white before you put the mud on and blow dry
it. You put it on the base, and then you put the mud, you cover the whole thing in the iron earth, and then you just wait for it to crack. The trick is to try and get it to crack so that you show a lot of the color underneath. So I saw another blog post where the dude glazes over the paint first with some clear PVA glue to make like a super non-sticky surface. So the principle is that the paint doesn't have anything to grab onto, so it kind of contracts more. And he managed to get it so that there's like, it's almost like it looks like a river delta. There's mostly kind of lava with just little islands of Martian iron earth. I've not been able to reproduce that yet. Actually, the layer of iron earth is so thick that it's still drying. It's been almost like 30 hours. It's still drying, and it's still cracking. So I got to see what it's going to end up as. But yeah, so I have this little experiment. One is just plain paint. One is paint with art coat on it, and one is paint with clear PVA glue, thick globs of iron earth on top. I'm just going to see what happens.
Wow, interesting.
I've spent so much time on this base.
Yeah, so it's one of those projects where you have to do the bases for the whole army, and you'll do it like 3 days in advance, and then just let them dry. You don't want to do that the week before a tournament.
Yeah.
No, this is just one base for this one thing.
Well, I really like what you're doing with that lava base. I've been following the updates that you've been doing, and it's going to look really good. So even though it's like a lot of time, I think as soon as you get one base ready, if you're going to do multiple in that style, you get one done to the standard you want, and then the rest of them are a lot quicker.
Yeah, it won't be too hard. So what is a magma? Why did you buy a magma droth or a magma dragon?
Yeah,
magma dragon, right? Magma droth's the one.
Magma droth's the Fire Slayer one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm making a Monster Mash destruction list. So a Thunder Tusk or two, and then all just big Forge World models. So Magma Dragon, Dreadmaw, Colossal Squig. Seems like Destruction has the monopoly on most of the large resin kits. So that's kind of the inspiration. These are actually quite good, but they're expensive points wise and money wise. And obviously not good at holding objectives, but just fun. It's just a fun list.
Cool. Any other interesting hobby cred you've been up to besides that?
No, that's been taking up all my time, man.
Well, it sounds like it. So I guess we'll move on to Logan. Anything interesting?
Just rolling over 8th edition rumors. Have been way too busy to get any hobby done, sadly.
Yeah, demotivated. Have you been?
Yeah. So I've been looking at AOS a bit more. Like if anybody listens to Garage Hammer, you heard me call in on their show this past week.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Well, you should listen to it. Anyway, I've been playing around with different ideas for some Age of Sigmar lists. As far as hobby, yeah, as you said, it's just been a total lack of motivation. With 8th coming out, I have no interest at all in playing 7th. So just a waiting game and drilling over stuff as it comes out.
Right on. Scary, what kind of hobby progress you been making?
Okay, well, down in the studio, I've been busy basically finishing up some terrain. I've got enough work done on some of the armies that I own, but I really, with the release of the Shadow War Armageddon terrain, really kind of got me inspired to kind of revamp some of my terrain. So I've been essentially setting it up into different styles, so that I can have some different terrain sets. Because normally I've had terrain that fits all categories, just a basic generic terrain. But now with the different fat mats and stuff, you can kind of have a terrain set that kind of matches each mat, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what we were doing with our terrain as well. Not all of it, but it's with those mats. Yeah, it's so awesome to just be like, oh, I have one winter mat. Let's make a winter table, and then it's a no-brainer to set it up too. You don't have to remember what piece goes where if it all looks the same.
Exactly. So, I have a desert table now, and I've got my, I've got two different desert mats, and then I've got terrain to build the city mat, a ruined city.
Yeah.
And so I'm making them generic enough that I can put them on each map, but that I can put them together and they just look good. I've been right now, especially with all the changes of edition and the way that the competitive 40k scene is at the moment, I'm like you, Logan. I've been I'm never not motivated to play, but my motivation to play is different. I've been really just focusing on thematic games and narrative stuff and campaigny sort of things.
Yeah, I hear you.
And it's kind of helped me stay focused. And just kind of play games, and then so other than the terrain, Shadow War Armageddon, I've been having a lot of fun playing Shadow War Armageddon. I've played a total of 8 games so far, and I've filmed 7 of them in a little campaign that I'm doing with Adam Marcel from Blackfire Productions.
Nice.
Okay.
An up-and-coming YouTube channel. He does mostly Hobbit, like the Hobbit stuff.
Mhm.
But he's that's got him back into the 40k universe. So I went down to a cool little game store in Orangeville, Ontario, where they have an old school games day table, like
Yeah. Like the ones in
and,
Kingston, right? I saw some of the pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they have 2 of the tables there in the little store, and we were able to set up. We basically got it there at like 10 a.m. in the morning, and we didn't stop filming till like 7 o'clock at night. So we did like
Nice.
a full day. It was really fun, and so our little kill teams have become really ragged, and the story is actually really fun. So I've really enjoyed that narrative aspect. And last but not least, painting wise, Tomb Kings. I've been playing some Age of Sigmar, so just rebased all my Tomb Kings, put some sand on the bases. I'm just really excited to kind of play with, and I've actually played like 3 games of Age of Sigmar lately, and
Sick.
yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's really fun.
That's the thing.
You know?
It's really fun, and
Yeah,
it's like I can't explain. When I play Age of Sigmar, man, time goes by so fast. Like I forget.
It's crazy. Like we're playing like 1,000 points, like nothing crazy. Like it's just like little match play games.
Mhm.
But even at 1,000 points, I feel like I'm playing like a game. Like I've got like a couple of blocks of infantry and a couple of heroes and maybe like 1 or 2 like monsters. Like
Scales
and
well.
you can. Yeah, it's really fun. And I've played against like Destruction. By the way, those Iron Jaw orcs are like dirty.
Yeah.
And I played against Chaos, and I've got like a game against the Bretonians coming up at some point, and
They're
So
actually
anyway.
really good. Bretonians, surprisingly, they got a lot of really nice rules. You don't see them too much, but because their points are a bit high now. But
yeah, so it's been fun, and I've been like I started playing with like just mostly infantry, but I've actually finally kind of busted out of my shell and played with like a couple of the different models I own. And it's just really cool to see that synergy between like, a Necrotech and a Bone Giant and, War Sphinx and like just like different things that I hadn't played before that I'm like putting on the table again. And it's kind of cool to see their dynamic.
yeah.
And then Dark Eldar, just getting them painted up to a higher standard. I'm not really like building anything different. It's just more highlights so they look nicer, so that I can actually put a 1,250 point army down on the table now that's all like a Highlander style, and it's all up to like the next standard level that I want my army to look at, so it like pops at you from the table. And I think it's gonna look good. Like I'm really waiting for 8th before I like build anything else or add anything else to the army, because who knows, maybe shredders will be amazing, so I'd want to make a bunch of guys with shredders, who knows, so we'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, if I can jump in for 1 second, speaking of building new models, this is just a shout out to anybody listening to this who has spare bits. If anyone has a cyclic ion raker from a Ghost Keel and is interested in selling it, let me know. I've been looking for one for months, and I don't want to buy a whole Ghost Keel kit to get one. So give me a shout, and I will buy it from you if it's a reasonable price.
Does
So I
each
guess-
Ghost Kill kit come with one of each?
It
or
comes
what?
with one of each, and when I moved, I lost all the extra bits for one of my Ghost Keels, which included that weapon.
Oh no.
That's funny. So I guess it goes on to me. I haven't been doing too much in the way of hobby, but as far as motivation with 8th edition, I'm actually pretending, because I'm on the ETC team, I have to assume, like, the rumor is that they're going to go to 8th edition. So I am, but we don't know for sure. So I'm kind of mentally just basically preparing for 7th. So we're still preparing the ETC team for 7th edition. We're still tweaking 7th edition lists. We're still doing 7th edition matchups. And so the second that 8th date gets released and we know that the ETC is going to 8th or not, that's kind of when I'll be able to put my feet up and relax and kind of turn off 7th mode.
Mm-hmm.
That will
So-
suck if 8th comes out and you guys are still playing 7th. That would really suck.
That's what happened with ETC when 6th came out, and it was almost, I think, 8 months later they were still playing 5th, and it was a very unpopular decision. So I don't think it would happen again.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of teams, there's a lot of posts going on about people wanting it. Well, there's some teams. So the teams that seems to be really good teams, like they're like they're in the top 5 or 6, like they regularly win the ETC. They obviously want us to stay 7th edition because they're probably more tuned and rehearsed. Whereas all the other teams are like, no, let's just go to 8th, right? Because it benefits the newer teams to go to 8th.
Yeah.
So, because there'll be a big shakeup. I'd love to go to 8th. It's so that's I've been really just focusing on 7th ed mindset. But as far as building and hobbying, as I had the Silver Tower expansion pack where it had the 4 heroes for like a ridiculously low price. So I got 3 of them built: Chaos Sorcerer, another Fire Slayer character, and a Bloodbound character. And then I've just been also building. For some reason, I got 30 more brims and 30 more blues. So ETC doesn't have the split rule. So I was like, oh, I don't need to continue working on my brims and blues because I'll just summon pinks and they won't split. But now that the new Disciples of Tzeentch book, it's not even that new, I think that blues and brims in massive numbers could be something really hot in AOS. So I'm working them through for kind of a dual purpose there.
I thought you were going to say that you bought more Eldar for a second there.
Oh, God.
No,
I think he's past that.
Well, as far as buying new models, I'm on the same boat as Scary. Like, I'm just going to wait till the new edition comes out because, like, there's actually armies that I have that I want to do, and I have sitting behind me, like Sisters of Battle. I have 1,000 points painted, and I just want them to be viable, and then I might just revisit some of them. So I'm really trying to focus my hobby attention on, like, ETC, and which is 7th edition 40k, and Age of Sigmar. So that's that. So I guess we're going to go on to games played. Ridvin's the only one that really been playing games since our last show, and he already talked about them. But I did have a question for that. With that Armageddon, did you actually buy the set, the train pieces yet?
I got 2 of them.
Like the starter sets?
Yeah, 2 full kits. I got one shipped in from England, and I got one from our local game store. One's sitting in the box, brand new. I'm thinking of doing a giveaway for the channel.
Okay.
So stay tuned for that. I'm probably going to be giving away a brand new in-box Shadow War Armageddon set.
Now, is that enough terrain to play a whole game, or do you think you need more?
No, you definitely need more. Definitely, Shadow War Armageddon benefits greatly from having like a massive amount of terrain. But if you have already built a collection and you want to add that in, it really adds a lot of depth in terms of height to your games with the different like catwalks and stuff. And it's all very modular, so you never have to play on the same set twice. Like they have little clips and things, so you can actually clip it together and it holds really well without, and it's all like push fit for the ladders and things like that too. So you don't have to glue like anything, like all the stuff, and it fits in a tray. That's about this big, like a tray, like that far apart.
They did a fantastic job designing that.
It's great. It's really, really good. And so, say for example, you're a new hobbyist and you bought yourself that set. You get yourself a set of the containers, the GW containers.
Mm-hmm.
Get yourself a set of the Prometheum relay pipes, and get yourself a set of the Hemothrope reactors, for example. And you've got like a decent amount of line of sight blocking terrain. You've got some little scatter terrain with like the little crates in the barrels. You got some pipes, and you can put that on like a 3x3 foot table, and it'll be like perfect to play a game of Shadow War Armageddon.
Nice.
Yeah,
Now,
too bad it's so expensive.
Yeah, it's worth it. And the terrain's the one thing that'll last you your entire career as a hobbyist if you treat it well.
Yeah, I agree. The only issue that I have with is like I have only so much painting time, and so whenever I buy a GW terrain, you're like, there's so much detail that it's like it's not like, you know, when you buy like a foam core building and you dry brush it, you have to actually paint the detail on there, and it's like it's a lot. But that's cool. That's really awesome to hear.
Yeah, no, I kind of cheated a little bit. I did I grabbed some old school foundation paint yellow, and then did like the large areas in some yellow, then painted everything lead belcher, and then just like emptied 2 pots of Nuln oil on everything, and it actually looks decent on camera, right? So
that's what matters.
Now, do you think Shadow War Armageddon is a replacement for Kill Team, or is it a completely different animal than Kill Team? Or
I think it's a different animal. From playing Kill Team to playing Shadow War Armageddon, I prefer Shadow War Armageddon because of the depth of the game, and it's definitely a lot more like you become a lot more akin to like each individual model that you name, and that they get like specific gear, and and you can switch them around, and they get hit in the head and have to miss the next game, and like it's definitely designed for campaign game, but I wouldn't recommend somebody who has like a campaign team to play like a one-off game with somebody who just started a team. Okay. Because it gets really unbalanced really quickly.
Yeah. So if like you and I started,
if you're gonna have like a match.
Oh, sorry. I think we got the lag there.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Ahead. Yeah. No. So so as you're saying, if you and I start a campaign, like it's great. I feel it scales up well, unless you have like a really bad one game where half your models just like get it taken out of action and just die. Yeah. And I think and I think that's like, it's a very rare chance that'll happen. But that happened to my opponent. He lost like 3 models in one game, and he's got a Grey Knight kill team, which is a max of 5 models.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So like it really stung, right? But he's not giving up. So we're seeing how using things like the specialists and things like that, if he can kind of come back from such a horrible bout of rolling where he lost his leader and he lost a whole bunch of stuff. So we'll see. But other than that, I wouldn't play like with my kill team. There's like 10 witches all geared up, against like you who just like, I've got my Genestealer cult, or something, and it's like your first game.
So what is it now? Is it something too where, like, I know if you play Blood Bowl, let's say, like people would just keep their teams year after year after year, but this is like, would we just, if our gaming group was playing it, do you think we'd reset every year, reset every 6 months, or would you continue?
Well, there's a mechanic in the game where if you want to use a particular member of a team that you like, that you'd like to add them onto a team, you just have to pay extra points for every skill and every like characteristic upgrade they have.
Okay.
So you can hire them onto your team, but I think it would be a thing to discuss with your opponent. Be like, hey, I've got my leader that I've been using for 20 games. She's really beefy, but she's 400 points. So I'm gonna have like her and 2 models. Like, is that cool, or would you prefer if I just built something brand new?
Okay, fair enough. It really intrigues me that, because it's basically the new Necromunda, and I used to love Necromunda back in the day, so I super want to get into it.
It's the exact same as Necromunda. I think Necromunda, like the rules haven't really changed. They've just made things like ammo rolls more forgiving, and things like combat more decisive. Because if you go down in combat, you're like automatically taken out of action if there's no friendly models attacking the same model. So if you get like a one-on-one fight and you go down in that fight, like your model's out of action. Like there's nobody to save them. They just go down and they just like stab them. Yeah, and that's it.
You not guaranteed dead. You're just guaranteed out of that game, right?
Yeah, out of the action. Then you have to roll to see if like on the serious injury roll, and on a 1 they die or they get captured. So you have to see what happens, or they might like get a skill, because what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's true. Yeah. If I got punched in the face, my face would be right stronger.
+1 wound. Yes, go.
Yeah. Woo! So we'll move on to news and rumors. First thing is there's some in the AOS world, very quickly, just they're doing a second wave of Caradron Overlords, but nobody wants to listen to that because we all want to listen to the 40K 8th edition leaked. I guess it's not. They're not even rumors.
Leaked. Yeah.
No, it's not even leaked. Rumors. No.
GW's putting them out.
They're doing
so
it
I'll
right
hand it
this
over
time.
to you, Logan.
All
Logan,
right.
you can start us off, and and there might be some salt. There might be some extreme fanboyism. So prepare for the roller coaster ride. It is 8th edition.
Amazingly, for most of our listeners, it's actually going to be mostly fanboyism for me. So I will start off with our first note in our show notes, which is 8th edition. Yeah.
I feel that way as well. Seventh edition. So before what's your opinion on 7th edition, Scary? I know I'm
7th edition.
Like the end of it. Are you glad to see it go?
I am so happy. I want it to be taken around in the back and shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
it's a really fun game, but it's so bloated. Yeah. I just want them to like grab a liposuction thing and just suck all the excess out of there, and just leave like a flappy mess that we can work with.
That's a
really good analogy.
It.
Yeah. I feel exactly the same way. I love the game. I love the complexity and depth it has, but it's it seems like every release, especially the stuff that's come out for the Gathering Storm, has just it's taken the existing problems and made it worse, right? Like with End Times and Fantasy, there were ridiculous imbalances that showed up, but the game was still like until the Elf one came out, which I think was the second to last book. It was okay. Like the Legions of Chaos was dumb, but you could still beat it. Once the Elf stuff came out, like you had to destroy it, and that's sort of when people knew everything was over. 40K sort of felt that way with the Ynnari, and with all the special rules, and honestly how poorly written the Soulburst rules were. It really was reminiscent of the End Time stuff, where they're just like, this is the last hurrah, buy stuff. And then they're doing the whole reboot here, which had me a bit cynical, but they seem to be handling the 8th rollout really well so far.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I was like, don't get me wrong, as a TO, Ynnari like ruined things. Like you'd get 1,000 Ynnari questions, and it was like the #1 issue that would come up. And then, but like I loved 7th edition. It was great. It's right up there with 5th edition for me as the best editions ever, but it's just getting old, and I think that the points need to be reset so the model counts drop.
Yeah.
Because somebody had once, Nate, I think it was Nate Stevens told me this. He said it's the edition of free, and if you think about it, it's true. All the good armies get stuff for free. Like Riptide Wing, it's a free formation with no tax, right?
Yeah.
So anything that gets free stuff is good, and everything that doesn't get free stuff was bad. And so it kind of turned into that a little bit, whereas if a new book came out, you would just read through and be like, okay, is there anything that's free with no tax? No, then it's not good. So that's kind of my point, so I'm glad to move on.
I could ask you guys a question, because I just started replaying in 7th, so I haven't played since 1st, so 1st to 7 was nothing for me. Yeah, so do you think that some of the sentiment around 7th edition is influenced by the fact that Sigmar became so popular? And, 8th is basically a lot of Sigmar. So do you think it's kind of a little bit of grass is greener on the other side thing?
So as probably the saltiest person to ever play 40K, I think, yes, that does have a factor for it. If you had asked me that question a year ago, the answer would have been absolutely not. But they've proven that they can take something that's in a really bad state, so it's used, unpointed Age of Sigmar, pre-General's Handbook, and sort of equate that to 7th. And they're nowhere near the same level of bad, but they're both problematic, right? And they took Age of Sigmar and did a complete 180, and have turned it into a very successful game that is growing unbelievably rapidly. Like, in a year, we've gone from people laughing at us for wanting to run tournaments to basically selling out tournaments a month in advance and having huge interest. And like Adepticon was over 100 people for AOS. LVO was like 100 people for AOS. That's huge for 8 or 9 months before that came out. So yeah, given that they've done such a good job with that, I'm very optimistic for 8th. There are some things that, may be a little oversimplified, but coming from the perspective of 7th, where everything is so goddamn complicated that it takes like 30 minutes to do a psychic phase, I will take streamlined and lose some of the stuff I like for the sake of keeping the game moving.
Yeah.
Something that I'm very excited about is being able to grab a game and teach a brand new person without having to teach them like so much, just bull crap. Yeah. Like just stuff that doesn't matter. Like
that's so true. That's the #1 thing is like, I can't teach people 40K 7th ed. All.
It's like mind-boggling. And then it's like, oh, you want to play Admech, or do you want to play Skitarii, or do you want to play this, or how many books do you need? You need like 4 books, and you need like this formation, and just watch out for this like combination of books that's gonna kick your ass every time. Oh man.
Yeah, my How to Play series was 10 hour-long videos. Yeah. And that's just basic rules. That wasn't any special rules or any armies.
It's crazy.
It was just the basic rules.
I mean, the metagame is still going to be nuts, though, right? Like, that's never going to go away. Even in AOS, there's unbelievable amounts of combinations for stuff. Like, it's nearly impossible to stay on top of, just like it is in 40K. But
it's not impossible because it's all free, Logan.
No, it's not free. None of the formations are free. A lot of the stuff not all of it.
They're not free, but what I love is that the structure is so simple. Move and shoot And
Exactly.
like charge, like that at the basic level. That's all you need to teach someone, and then as they get better at the game, they learn the combos.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the best things that is going to come from Age of Sigmar is the use of keywords. And I'm super excited about keywords in 40K.
So we'll talk about those coming up. But I think just to summarize what everyone's been saying here, there was actually I've been listening to a lot of Garage Hammer lately, so I'll use an example from that. Alex Gonzalez on there put it really well. Is that 40K for the longest time has been a method of gaming which is you can do this but, and Age of Sigmar is you can do this and. You don't have those little rules that prevent you from doing stuff like, oh, you shot a rapid fire weapon so you can't charge. Oh, you moved so your salvo is half range. Age of Sigmar is, you moved, now you can shoot. Like, the only exception is, did you run? Okay, you can't charge or shoot.
Yeah.
And so far it seems the new 40K is shaping up to be that way as well, which is just
good.
The barrier to entry is so much lower. And the list building hopefully gets simpler as well.
And that's one thing is that, this is the last point before we get into the rumors, is I feel like in AOS, which I'm hoping will transfer to 8th edition, those gotcha moments are much less. Like in 40K 7th Ed, like you'd be like, well, in this comp pack, it does gotcha. And I did that at Adepticon to a guy. I went, well, they ruled it this way, so even though you declared shooting with your, and this was top table, so of course it was acceptable, but it wasn't rude or anything. But he's like, oh, I'm going to shoot your warp spires. I'm like, well, I'm jumping on a line of sight, you can't shoot, and now you actually lost because you declared all the weapons on your Riptide. That Riptide no longer can shoot. And that was like, haha, I gotcha. And I find that like 40K is like, if you're a good like a good 40K player right now, that's all you're doing to new players. Gotcha, 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 gotcha. Whereas in Age of Sigmar, it's just like, I'm going to do this, and it should win me the game because I'm on the objectives, but there's less gotcha moments, right?
Mm-hmm. So. You kind of know what you kind of know what's going to happen. And if you're curious, you just go, hey, let me look at that war scroll real quick.
Yeah.
And
or you pull your phone out and you download the war scroll and you read it while they're doing their movement phase.
It takes like 2 seconds. Oh, okay, so they get +1 to hit if there's a hero nearby. Oh, or they hit infantry really well. Well, I should probably send a monster up against them. Or like it's just simple. Yeah.
So let's go on to the first new 8th edition.
So
because we all going to miss 7th, but thank God 8th.
Boo-hoo. So this is probably the single best part of all of this, is that the 8th edition stuff has actually been play tested. And from talking to the people who've been involved in it, I have received no information past the fact that they are heavily NDA'd to the point that they literally cannot be on podcasts that even discuss this. So we'll have a guest next week, not talking about 40K. But the guys from Frontline, Nova, Adepticon, and I think there were 1 or 2 other events in there as well, actually got versions of this to provide feedback on and do a solid week of playtesting, which, as I think we all know, is a week more playtesting than any 40K release has had in about a decade. So that on its own is fantastic, and to be fair, you can actually see the direct influence some of these people have had into it, which is pretty fun. So they've had the right people involved, and no matter what you may think of those folks, just taking a look, comparing the Nova guys, so Phil and his crew, to the Frontline guys, Reese and Frankie, it's 2 very, very different viewpoints on how 40K works or how 40K should be played. So it's really good to have those differing opinions going back to the development group for this. So I'm really excited about that.
Cool. I should ask us though.
What's that? They should
ask for the Canadian opinion.
We didn't get a pre-release of Age of Sigmar either. Damn GW. Maybe next time.
They don't even know we exist because we're Canadian. That's normal.
It's true.
I think actually that goes back to, I believe, CanHammer, who broke their. They were playing podcasts and they broke the agreement when Age of Sigmar dropped, and they released photos as clickbait essentially, like they wanted Twitter followers or people to listen to their show, so they leaked it early.
Yeah, the whole
and
rulebook.
I think that might have burned everybody.
Yeah.
So,
well, fortunately, we don't.
Because I've had people even mistaken us when we were a fantasy podcast for them, like on Twitter. So,
hopefully that mistake won't happen.
That's why we're not allowed to have nice things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Man.
So moving along, the next,
and we're not with the large markets, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Though people do seem to know us when we travel, which is nice. Anyway, next one. This is probably the biggest one. People were thinking, okay, so 8th edition's coming out. Are we seeing previews of this in the new rules for everything that's come out for Gathering Storm? The answer is a very firm no, we're not. All of the current rules are going to be completely invalid as of the day of release. All
Good.
the codexes are gone. They're being replaced basically by Grand Alliance books to start. But the rules are going to be free. Every model that's in existence right now, or being sold right now, I imagine is more accurate, is going to have rules on day one available, just like they did with Age of Sigmar. Hopefully with less, pat your head and rub your stomach and shout for the lady, but it's really good to have all that day one. Now, interestingly, they haven't said anything about formations. And given what little we've seen of Force Org charts so far, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not in the game anymore. Or at least...
No, there's 6. There's 6 Force Orgs in the main rulebook.
6 Force Orgs, yes, sorry. I have formations specifically.
Formations.
So maybe we'll see them like Age of Sigmar, where they're used very sparingly, which I think would be cool. And probably in larger volume, sort of like, think Demi Company rather than Riptide Wing, which could be interesting. But there hasn't been a whole bunch of information on that. The books we are going to have at launch. So these are the core books. Everyone's going to have access to these. They're going to be up on GW. They've been saying that third-party sales are going to have very limited supply, so get your pre-orders in soon or just buy from GW. So there's going to be the core rulebook. And then there's going to be Imperium, Xenos, and Chaos, sort of Grand Alliance, or whatever they're going to call them, books that are going to cover all the different sub-factions for those. I'm hoping...
Now, do you think that's enough?
No.
So let's speculate. I don't think that's enough. I read that and I was a little bit disappointed. I was like, why can't Orcs and Nids be their own? And then you had Gene Their Cult, maybe add some more stuff in there, or...
It's going to be super lopsided is the problem, right? Like, it kind of is in Age of Sigmar as well. You have Death, you have Destruction, and then you have Order, which is this huge book. And then the other two were like, we've got 1 or 2 little races in them. And then Chaos is pretty big. But for 40k, I mean, you look at it, Imperium's like literally half the armies, or a third of the armies that are out there.
Oh, if not
Then
more.
you've got Xenos, which is almost the other 2/3, and then you have Chaos, which at this point is just demons and CSM, because KDK seems to be gone. So
Yeah, but that being
It's gonna be
said,
rolled into
now
some
you're gonna
things.
have Death Guard, you're gonna have thousand Suns, you're gonna have 1,000. I think if they could theoretically flush Chaos out to be as big as the other two if they
I
wanted.
think-
But
they can.
they did say that faction list on the website wasn't
it
the
is temporary.
definitive faction list.
Yeah.
It was like just based on narrative to suck people into the narrative. So
Yeah.
I think, because somebody asked about like what happened to Military Tempestus and what happened to Skitarii, and they said no, that stuff's still there. It's just not in the website because it's
It's
Something
big
that I
sense.
found really interesting in terms of all that development of the different factions was that essentially what they've kind of led the narrative to be is that the universe and the galactic plane is kind of like split into 2. So there's like this giant, like if you look at the new galactic map, there's this giant like string of like warp energy all the way across the middle of the galactic plane, and in one side it's like a lot of chaos taint, and the other one where there's like the Emperor and Ultramar is on the other side.
Yep.
So you have and I feel like that use of chaos as a big main mean bad faction I think is going to be part of that like narrative, like they're the big bad guys. Other than that, you've got the like Xenos, but out of all the Xenos, probably Tyranids is the most like menacing, and they can kind of attack everybody. But then you've got like Orcs and this and that. So I like it. I think it just simplifies it. You've got like Chaos, good guys, and Xenos. Like aliens.
Yeah,
it's cool.
as long as
then
there's very distinct differences between the factions that make up those, I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Agreed.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'm just a little bit worried about having my Eldar with the Tyranids kind of mixed in with them.
Yeah, it's going to be.
It's a Grand Alliance.
I think that's where the
From a
keyword
fluff
stuff,
point of view.
Yeah, from fluff. Yeah, I agree. It's very ethnocentric for the Space Marines. It's going to be interesting to see how the keywords work, though, right? Because if you think about it in 7th edition terms, having all of Xenos as one faction is terrifying. But if it works anything like Age of Sigmar, it doesn't matter, right?
doesn't mean anything.
It's not going to make
Yeah.
much difference.
If they give the proper bonuses to going pure, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll talk about that in a second. So the other stuff that's coming with this is apparently most of the rules, if not all of them, are available electronically, which is good because Black Library has been falling a little behind, so it'll be good to see what they get. There is a 40k app in the works. There is no release date, but it will come eventually. And then, just like AOS, there's the 3 ways to play. So you've got narrative play, open play, and matched play. And match play basically is there to give guidelines to TOs for how to run stuff. It does not have a full tournament pack, which some people were hoping for. But, again, if it's anything like AOS, we're going to see like a 1-page comp pack from events, and that's going to be it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, which is great. Now, they did announce something about 2-point levels, right?
Yeah.
Which I was like, what's the point of having points for fluff games and for competitive games, and why would you differentiate that and not just have points for everything that's the same?
I love that. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's good because
absolutely
you
love
can
it.
still get a balanced game even if you're not trying to trash each other, right?
But I can see it being something like this. In a narrative game, you pay 200 points for a tactical squad, but it's with any upgrades you want. So give the sergeant it's his like narrative plasma pistol and power sword, right? And give the guy like a rocket launcher and then like a plasma gun or whatever. But in like competitive play, 150 points or whatever it is for a tactical squad, but you pay for that plasma gun if you want it, and you pay for the last cannon.
Yep.
So I like the fact that in a narrative game, you'd be like, let's play 2,000 points narrative, and you just build your army with like units, and it doesn't matter how you built the units out of the box,
Yeah.
Okay.
right? And you
See,
can be
that's
like,
not how I interpreted it, but that's now you say that, it makes sense.
I think
Yeah.
it's
yeah, I think that's how they intended it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to do it. It makes like really casual games. Like thinking when I go to fandom, which haven't been for a while, but when I used to go to fandom to get pickup games, a lot of people that play there are much newer. They're not interested in min-maxing their list, so they roll some dice and have some laughs. And at that point, it's just easier to say, okay, let's play 2,000 points. If you're 100 points over, 100 points under, it doesn't matter, right, for that kind of atmosphere. And this just makes it so much easier. You don't have to say, oh, I'm 5 points over, is that okay? It's just pick the stuff up off the shelf, put it down. Is it roughly correct? Yes, because they're doing the rounding for you.
and that's great. And you've kind of seen that in Age of Sigma, like a unit's like 160 points, but they'll have either spears or big weapons or hand weapons.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
like
up to 10 is this many points, and up to 20 is this many points.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's actually, it's cool to see, though, that with the matched play rules, they do have the full pointing things out, which is really good. This is one of the things I don't really like about AOS is you can't do that, the little bits of min-maxing. They are keeping that for 40k, though, which is really cool. So you want to shave off 2 points in your list somewhere, you can do that. Just change your upgrades around, which is nice.
Yeah, and that means that you can actually really kind of tweak it, and like that competitive player in us is like, I'm gonna make every frag grenade count.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I get the sense that that's what makes me confident about this 8th edition for Warhammer is that they could have just made it like Sigmar, right? Like your attack squad is 200, you put whatever you want, you can take up to 2 whatever, right? And it's all the same points. But they went the extra mile for competitive play, and maybe this is from the input from the testers or whatever, but for competitive play, it's going to be like old times. You have to pay for your upgrades and you can min-max, right? So I like that they put that little bit of extra thought in it, because they could have just easily said it's like Sigmar, right?
Yeah,
That's true.
which is good. So, hopping along, we already talked about the fact factions are getting broken up, and we talked about sort of new factions. I guess the big thing to say here is that there is apparently a new faction coming at launch. The rumor mill, this is probably the one thing that is rumors, but the videos sort of give it away. It looks like Death Guard is going to be the new faction the game's coming out with, so expect to see probably...
But they're not new. That's like when they said new faction, I was like, is it going to be like, how new, right? But no, it's just a reboot of an old faction. But I'm sounding salty.
I
but I'm
guess
not.
it's reclassifying them, right? It's like Khorne Demonkin wasn't really a faction, but it was a faction. Now we've got Death Guard for it, right?
Well, maybe if it's about keywords, well, that's what they're talking about, right? So there'll be like a Death Guard keyword.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And we did sort of start to see rules going that way, which is good. So,
and you kind of saw that leak, so they're gonna have a Primarch and something big.
So that's actually one thing I'm really interested in seeing. And given that we've seen this with Robo Girly Man so far, and the hints of a Mortarion model or new Typhus, whatever it might be, I'm really interested to see if 40k goes for sort of that centerpiece model approach, kind of like Age of Sigmar has been. So you think about a lot of
well.
AOS armies, like I've been sort of on the outside of this, but like you look at the undead army, you've got you've got Morton Goals, but you've got like the guy on a Terrorgeist or a zombie dragon, and for Sylvaneth you've got what's her face on the big beetle. For Stormcast you got the
But they've been doing that already since Magnus, right? Like Magnus,
they have been,
Guilliman.
Yeah, exactly. It's been starting to go that way, and I like that. I think it's a really cool approach because it gives you something like I want to play Sylvaneth, but I don't really like how it looks. Well, if you like the main thing in the army, you're good to go, right? Like that's the cool thing. You can base the army around one big centerpiece, which I like.
And sometimes you start an army based on a centerpiece. Like you're like, I want to play. I bought Ilariel. She's 650 points, so all I need is like just a couple units, and now I have a 1,000-point army, and I've painted 10 models.
Yeah, well, it's like that. Like I've got Nagash sitting in my closet right here, right? And I've spent all day making Age of Sigmar lists. It's like I only need 10 other models.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
I just hope they bring Vect back.
Vect.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
or at least
that
make
rumor's been going for a while now, hasn't it?
Well, he has a model, so
yeah, why not?
He did. It's not available anymore, right? So
that's true.
I have him sitting on my shelf. I just want to be able to use him.
yeah, I think it's because of the slave girls that they removed him from the range. I honestly believe that.
That's possible.
That people, I bet you they got some HR complaints about the 2 slave girls.
Well, now they're just objectives.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, even worse.
Literal objectification.
Women are objectives.
Oh god. Moving right along.
Yeah, makes sense. They've cleaned up the range completely from.
So we were talking about keywords earlier. So there's one really interesting part of this is that they said this was unintentional. I don't know how unintentional it was, but it's worked. Is that by having everything be keyword driven, it removes the possibility for Death Stars. You can still have super strong units that can get buffed, but
unintentional. If Frankie and Reese had anything to do with this rule set,
that's
I
saying.
They said it was unintentional. They said that Death Stars in 7th were unintentional.
Oh yeah. That I can
not
see.
that not that keywords were unintentional. They said that they never foresaw Death Stars happening, but they never did anything to stop it.
They never saw Death Stars
now,
except they did it in Fantasy before they did 7th, and it was in 6th.
Yeah,
before it was
that's not
7th.
the same thing though. That's not the same thing because the Death Star play, a lot of it came down to just like whether they screwed up in their allies chart. Like as soon as they made Forces of the Imperial one block, it like ruined everything fluff wise. Like, because I was sitting there like, I'm a Dark Angels player. I would never have I should never have Space Wolves in my units, right?
Yeah.
Like that's so anti-fluff. And people are like, well, they would just do it anyway because they want to win the battle. I'm like, no, they would race each other. They'd fight as 2 separate forces and race each other to the objective, right? Like, so I think they messed up when they tried to simplify it, but they didn't go far enough, and I think it made it challenging.
The keyword stuff will help with that too, right? Like you can't play a crazy mixed army like that in AOS because of the keywords. Like you can, but it's going to suck. So it's going to be really good to see that come over to 40k as well. If they build the same sort of levels of synergies that they have been on the AOS side into the 40k keyword stuff, I think it's going to make for some really cool stuff. And that'll help, I think, with a lot of the lists that... so like there's a rumor floating around after LVO, the guy who won got a full Raven Guard army, which was terrible. Like, and it wasn't even like the good Raven Guard list that won Delaware or whatever it was last year. Like it was crap. But the thing was, this is going to be, it might be good in a year. So, well, maybe it will be with this, right? If all this stuff and then the new combat rules or the movement rules, that came out with regards to combat that we'll talk about in a bit. It's going to be cool to see what they do with this. But also, there are bonuses now if you stick to one faction, something called command points. So we don't have a ton of information about what these are so far. Sort of the stuff that's been hinted at is being able to take priority in combat since it's alternating activation.
After charges.
Yeah, it's after charge. You can
if you charge that turn, you get to go first. This is how I envision, based on the speculations. If you charge 3 units into their whole army, all your charging units get to go first, and then you alternate in remaining rounds. Which is kind of cool because in Age of Sigmar, they do the alternating. I hate to keep going back and forth, but you'd either get 3 units in or 1 unit in. And generally, I would only put 1 unit in if I can tactically avoid it, because then you're like, bang, I go first, I win, I'm not
Yeah.
actually taking anything
Yeah,
back. So this kind of makes sense. It rewards the aggressive initiator of the combat, right?
Yeah. Which is good.
Yeah,
So
they said that you get command points for sticking in faction and for using kind of special, like I guess what hopefully might be equivalent to battalions or whatever, and that and then you can use that for army-wide kind of buffs or command, kind of like the traditional command benefits from taking formations and stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting. We don't have a lot of information, so it's interesting to see how that works.
I'm thinking that if we were to relate it to anything, I'm pretty sure that it'll be something like magic instants.
yeah, sort of
You can kind of like
interrupts,
throw
right?
down
Yeah.
and be like, boom, I get this right now. And I think that I like the fact that it might affect, who knows, we have no idea what kind of thing it will affect, but I would like it if, here I am wish listing, but with the hints that I've seen, things like maybe Overwatch isn't a mechanic, maybe it's you have to use a command point to Overwatch.
And maybe only Dark Angels will be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. Or maybe overwatching on full ballistic skill, command points. Or, and I like the fact that if you build your army thematically, there's a chance. It just really depends on, like, maybe there's just one good command point that's, like, amazing and that you're going to use all the time and you get it no matter how you build your army. And then we'll see armies that are built like that with that one command point. But who knows, right? I'm reserving judgment until I physically see it and kind of get to play it in game.
Yeah, it's going to be
sounds
interesting
really
to do with
cool.
it.
Yeah,
It sounds like a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
So next big thing here, vehicles have been completely reworked. Think of them basically as monsters from Age of Sigmar, if you're familiar with it. So
Or
instead
monstrous creatures from 40K,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Their wounds and toughness. The big new thing of that is that as they take, and this is the same for monsters as well, is as they take wounds, they get weaker and weaker and weaker. So you're going to move
that's great.
slower,
Yeah.
you're going to shoot less, you're going to have limited abilities, that kind of stuff. So it's sort of a sliding scale instead of just boom, you're gone.
And it's way more thematic, as your rhino starts to take damage, it starts to smoke and it can't move as far and its gun stops working. Like yeah.
And it removes a lot of the annoying binary stuff, right? Like, there's nothing worse than having a Land Raider full of Terminators or something moving up the table. It's like, oh, immobilized result.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got 800 points now sitting there because somebody rolled a 6, right? It's
Or
not
Dreadnought.
fun. Yeah, exactly. Or Dreadnoughts. You get by Grav out, your model's useless now. It's really frustrating, and this takes care of that problem. And it looks like it's going to work really well. And I know we've been talking about this as a possibility for, like, Chris, you and I have been talking about this for 2 or 3 years on the podcast now.
Yeah, well, the thing is that when you think about it, vehicles in every edition we've played are either OP, like in 5th edition, or they're just utter garbage and they blow up too fast.
Yeah.
And there's no sweet spot there just because of the fact that they interact differently with everything. Whereas now, it's awesome. And, like, it's just kind of like, it makes sense. And it's less rules. So now you don't need a vehicle rule. You don't need a vehicle movement section. You don't need a vehicle, like, to hit section. You don't need a table for vehicle damage. You don't need a penetrating damage. You don't need to define a glancing hit. You don't need to define hull points.
It's like a fifth of the rule book.
Yeah, it's literally like a huge section in the rulebook gone. Everything moves this like, and because movement is no longer generic stats, which is, I think I'm going ahead a bit. Movement's going to be per war scroll. They don't. The movement rule can be you can move your model this many inches from one point on the model to the same point, and it's different for every model. So they can. They don't need rules for Eldar jet bikes turbo boosting and Space Marine bikes turbo boost this way, and Rhinos can go this way, and fast vehicles and skimmers, because they just put, if they fly, they can go over things, and then they move this far. And then, so you can be like, well, Dark Eldar ones are faster, so we'll just make them faster in their profile, and there's just less to know. So if you don't play Dark Eldar, you don't need to know how far a skimmer can move.
Yeah.
Nope.
I like it. I like it
a lot. I think it's like, that's a big deal to me. That's what that alone, even if a lot of the other stuff doesn't work, and it's like that alone just makes the game better, in my opinion, a lot.
Yeah.
And speaking of movement stats, the other thing here is that flyers are apparently going to work very similarly to how they work now, but the rules for their movement are going to be specific on their data slates. So I think we're probably going to see some of the stuff from Death in the Skies carry over in terms of like the agility values and whatnot. But obviously not in exactly the same form. But things like, oh, you've got Vector Dancer, right? It's going to be, okay, you can turn twice when you move. But those restrictions are going to be directly on the data slates, apparently, so you don't have to look them up. You don't have to figure out, okay, this has this special rule that interacts this way with this other bonus they get from a formation, so on and so forth. So,
I like that because in the AOS, flyers are just like normal models, except they can move over stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing really, and they can be attacked by everybody, and so there's nothing really special about being a flyer. But I think 40k, the flyers deserve a little bit of something special to set them apart, as opposed to just being another vehicle or monster. So I like that they're kind of setting flyers apart still.
Yeah. Yes and no. It's just like how frustrating is it playing against Magnus, who's in the air and only hit on 6s, right? And then you play against that one guy that has all the Skyfire and he's dead. Yeah. It's like that's
I
that's why I
suspect
like
they're going to get rid of that. I think you'll be able to shoot and attack flyers, but they're just going to have special movement stuff.
Yeah,
I could see them bringing back like some to hit modifiers, like cover and things like that. Especially with the new ways that it's just roll to hit with a ballistic skill. It's like a 3+ or a 2+. And then, I don't know, if you're shooting a flyer, it's -2. If you're shooting this, it's -1. I could see something like that happening.
Yeah, and they could do it on a per model basis.
Because, exactly. Beyond the data slate, this thing is moving fast. You have a -1 to hit it, right?
Yeah. It's a flyer. It's
and some flyers,
-3,
some flyers aren't -1 to hit because they're like big bricks with wings.
Exactly. If you've got something with hover, maybe not have that. If you got something with supersonic as a special rule, like the equivalent of that, maybe it's -2 to hit it. So, lots of good possibilities for it. So one of the interesting things they've said, and I was sort of happy to hear this, I want to get your guys' opinions on it, is they've said that the armies are generally going to play the same way they do now. So the play style is, in general, going to stay the same way.
From like a fluff point of view?
I guess.
That's a nebulous statement.
Yeah, it is very... yeah, exactly. It's pretty vague, right? So I can only assume they mean Tau is shooty, Chaos Space Marines will maybe assault, and demons are magic-y. But
yeah, they almost could have reworded it. Like, I hear that and I go, okay, the armies should play how they read. So if I read in a Black Library novel and it's orcs getting gunned down in droves running at the enemy, the orcs should be gunned down in droves, but like when they get there, they should chop everything up, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be good. And I think the thing that's causing the most outrage on the internet, mostly from people who I will freely say this, should not have an opinion on this. There are no more templates for scatter dice. This is literally the best thing that's ever happened.
I love it.
Yay!
And you know what? If you're complaining about it and you own a template company, your opinion is biased and is not
So
relevant.
actually, I know a guy who makes custom templates. I won't name the company necessarily, but he's actually thrilled about this because he's also a gamer and he knows how terrible these things are for the game. So it's a huge cut of his business, but he's just going to move on to making other stuff, right? Like he started making
other templates
and other markers and all that stuff, right?
Exactly.
So it's not a big deal for anyone. But for those who listen to us and maybe don't know how bad of a problem this is in 40k, like maybe you're an Age of Sigmar player and you're listening to this thinking, oh, 40k, that's neat. Let's see what's coming out. If you played in Fantasy, there were templates and they were very limited, right? You'd have like fire breath from a dragon, or you'd have like the catapults or the warp lightning cannons that had the little blasts. And those weren't too bad, right? It's one template per turn, generally, and some of them were one use only. So that's not too terrible. You measure your models, okay, maybe you worry about one being, I got this many models. The conversation happens once. With 40k, it was getting to the point, especially with barrage and blast weapons, specifically barrage, I guess, was the sort of the biggest offender, where you'd take like 30 minutes for a shooting phase just to figure out how many friggin' models you're hitting with these things, because you're rolling 15 or 16 of these templates per phase. And it's just
and all the scatter dice.
And the scatter die, did it actually move this direction? How many do you see under the templates?
And then you got to start flipping them.
Yeah, the barrage.
And that's so inaccurate when they're flipping them and hitting like 9 dudes, and you're like, I don't think that you could possibly hit 9 mathematically, but because I'm 2 inches apart. And that's another thing is like when you play a game, you'd be like, hey man, do you have any templates? No. And I could just like, I'd still spread out, but I could just like throw my models down and play.
Yeah.
Whereas when you'd go against that like, Renegades player, I would have to spend like 20 minutes 2-inching every single model in straight lines and confirming that guys aren't, and it just slowed the game down, made it cumbersome. And I can't tell you how many times And like, I don't like to argue templates. I usually say, how many's under there? If you say 3, 4, I'm like, okay, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
But like, you get the odd guy to be like 7, and you'd be like, there's no way. There's no way. They're all 2 inches apart in a straight line.
Impossible.
It's no way. And they would like argue and be like, well, it's scattered this, and you'd be like, and then I've had fights where it's like people are like, you're not moving it parallel to the scatter line. And I'd be like, my tape is parallel to your friggin' line, and like, and you're just like, to me this is parallel. Like, I'm doing my best, man, but like, you're fighting me, but I'm like trying my best. Like, I'm not trying to dick you, and you're like, and people would get like salty, and I was just
it's like how many?
We just gotta go.
Yeah, it's like, how many guys do you want the template to hit? Just tell me. Do you want 5 guys, 4 guys? Like, you just let me know.
I've heard.
But like, the vast majority of games were fine.
Yeah.
Like, the vast majority of games were fine, but then like, you'd be like, the guy would say 3, okay, 4, or the guy'd be like 5, but maybe I'm pushing it because 5 doesn't sound right, because like, everybody knows like a blast template, it's like 3 guys, right? To be honest.
Unless they're like really clumped up.
In a clumped ball, then it's obvious. But then you'd always have those guys, and it would just turn people off. I'd have people just complain, like, I don't want to deal with this, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
I suspect.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I actually got accused of slow playing for this once, because I understand the problems that come with blast templates, right? And if I get something, I think it's like precarious or arguable how many models there are under it, I'm going to say, hey, bud, I think I've got 5 under this. Can you check and let me know what you think? And so I was doing this every couple turns because the guy had his models in really weird positions. And he asked me if I was just trying to slow play him. Like, no, man, I just want to play fair. This is the kind of problems that go away. It's like, how many hits did you get? I got 4. It's on the die right here. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. So let's talk about stats a little bit then, just so that people know how guns work now. Who wants to tell people how the guns work?
Darren, you've been quiet tonight.
Yeah, so first of all, there are no more stat caps. So, like, strength 10 max is no longer a thing, apparently.
Yep.
Though we haven't seen any examples of something over 10. But, so stat caps are gone. Sort of to hit rolls are now just like in Sigmar. So you hit on a 2+, 3+. And so the sort of ballistic skill chart is gone. And I'm assuming there will be modifiers and stuff, as we already discussed. In terms of
actually, can I interrupt you for
profiles,
a second there? That makes sense. So instead of having a ballistic skill of 4, it's just going to say hit on 3+. Yep. Which, to me, I remember back to 3rd edition, they had the ballistic skill chart. I might be ranting it, like in a different section, and I couldn't figure, and it wasn't in the back summary of the 3rd edition rulebook, and I actually couldn't figure out how to hit at home. Me and my friend couldn't figure out how to hit because it was somewhere in the book, like a little table, and that was like a huge issue for us kids.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like 10 at the time or 12.
It just seems like a redundant chart to have.
Yeah. When it's like a 4+ is a 3, just write a 3+. You save.
At least weapon skill is a comparative chart. Ballistic skill is just a plain chart. So just write the number.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And then, so they didn't get rid of strength and toughness, which we thought maybe they would. We thought maybe it would go full Sigmar and just like a wound roll, but they're keeping strength and toughness. We haven't seen what that comparative table is, but it'll be interesting, especially if there's no stat cap of 10. So
yeah, but at the same time, they did state clearly that everything's going to be able to wound everything.
That's right. So that was. Yeah, there's a bit of controversy there. Some people feel like lasguns shouldn't be able to kill a land raider, but then they said, well, they can kill a land raider if you have 400 lasguns. Yeah, and
well,
but
I
think it's fair. If you're gonna shoot like a 2,000 point army, all of it at one vehicle, and you might kill it, then sure, go ahead.
that's where like for example, but that's just something as simple as like it's very, very unlikely that a lasgun will do damage to a heavily armored tank, right?
Yeah.
Like, but you might like knock out a sensor like thing or like a little antenna or something that'll hamper the tank, right? But that's where I believe the damage, like the rend roll, will come. The AP. So, for example, Land Raiders might be like super thick hull, can re-roll saves against weapons that have a AP of 0. You know, so in that case, like the lasgun can wound it, but it's going to be very unlikely that the lasgun will do any damage.
Yeah, and since Land Raiders have gone down to wounds, like all vehicles, they have a save now. So so if you're wounding on 6s and you shoot 20 las guns, 2 shots, that's 40 shots, 20 hit, and then on 6s you're getting like what, 3 wounds, and then he gets like a 2+ or a 3+ save, like one's going through.
Yeah.
And like so we saw the Dreadnought has 8 wounds, so I'm assuming a Land Raider has 16 or 20.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at it like it's negligible, but at least you can do, like, at least you don't have models that can't do anything.
Yeah.
But like a player that puts all his guardsmen las guns into your Land Raider is going to lose just because that's a poor decision statistically.
Yeah.
Right? They should be shooting something that they can actually do damage to. But
yeah.
I gotta say, all this talk
so
of
as we
vehicles-
mentioned.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So they got rid of AP value, as we already said, is no longer a kind of a yes or no thing. So AP2 basically can hurt everything. It's a modifier to armor save, so which is great. So that's kind of the 40k version of Rend, basically. Yeah.
I like that a lot too.
That's the overhaul to vehicle. Oh, no more D. But that's probably anything that was D is probably just going to be, a big AP modifier or something.
Yeah.
Well, they don't need it because ranges are still the same, and then weapons do damage now. So a las gun probably does 1 wound. A las cannon, they leaked it. It's strength 9. What's the rend on las cannon off the top
It's
of your head?
-3, and it does D6
-3.
wounds.
D6 wounds. Yeah. So if it's a D cannon, they don't need to have a special D stat. They can just say, oh, it's strength 12. Or 10, and it's rend -5, and it does 3d6 wounds, right? Boom. So you don't need a special rule for D. Now, one thing that's cool is like flamers just do d6 hits, which I thought was pretty good. Now, the only thing that bothered me about like the las cannon, like that's the example, is it does d6 wounds. I personally would have preferred it to just do 3 wounds or 4 wounds. So, like from my personal competitive perspective, I would have rather weapons just do a flat amount of wounds and have the odd thing do d6, like some like explosives, like maybe artillery shells, because they're so random, and that's to kind of give that, if you're dug in a foxhole or if you're a tree's in your way, it can't hurt you. But if a las cannon hits you, I just preferred if it was like, well, 3 las cannons kills a Dreadnought because they're 3 wounds each, that's 9 wounds, it's gone, right?
Well, there's a lot of weapons.
It has a random element there that maybe, like, you're already rolling to hit, you're already rolling to wound. It's a 3rd random element. That's just my 2 cents. But
well, I disagree. I kind of like it. I think that first of all, it's different than in Age of Sigmar, where it's like D6 wounds to a model, and it's not D6 like just wounds that get taken off a unit.
Yeah.
Do we know that for sure?
Yes,
though?
it's been confirmed.
Okay,
Yeah. It's been confirmed.
Okay, I didn't see that part.
Yeah, so for example, like they say, hey, a las cannon is going to be really good against a tank by being able to take chunks off it, but it's going to be useless against like a horde of infantry, where like its high strength will only like kill 1 guy, right? So, but I actually like the D6 thing because it does give you that, like, you know what, you might like really do a chunk of damage to a Dreadnought, right? But you might just glance it and only do like 1 wound.
Yeah. I think that's more just from a stat point of view. That's just the competitive person coming in. Of course, like the fewer instances of randomness increases the skill curve. So most games have like a random curve and a skill curve. Yeah. And so like if it's newbie friendly, usually the random curve is way bigger than the skill curve. And so that's just for me. If it was like predictable solid damage, it would just reward, I guess, better players, which maybe they don't want. So I get that, but just from a competitive point of view, I thought that would be a lot cleaner. But
as Scary said earlier as well, we've only seen 3 weapons, right? It's entirely possible that we're going to see exactly that type of static damage come in on like the really heavy hitting things, right? Because if you think
there will be a mix.
Of like exactly. You think of like the AOS equivalents. You've got some weapons that are just absolutely brutal, but get like 2 attacks but do 3 damage. And you've got others that get more attacks, not quite as good, and do D3 damage or something like that. So
yeah, it could be that just the las cannon's a random tool, right? Like the ones that they've chosen to leak. Yeah, that could be true.
Cool.
I can't wait to see what they do with Grav.
Yeah, I think we're all interested in that one. So let's talk about game size here. So there hasn't been a ton of information on this yet, apart from some vague times. But they've said that 1,500 to 2,000 points is expected to play in 1.5 to 2 hours.
Excited.
Yeah, which seems awesome. So I suspect what this is going to mean is that 2,000 points is probably going to be the tournament standard if it's based around 2 hours. And let's also keep in mind this is coming from GW, and they were pretty spot on with Age of Sigmar. Right, they were saying 2,000 points takes about 2 hours, and it does take about 2 hours, usually a little faster.
Unless you play Darren, then it takes 4. But
well, can't all be perfect. But if they are 2 hours for a 2,000 point game, and that becomes tourney standard, which I think is a reasonable expectation, I think that's fantastic because that means that you can reliably, from an event organizer standpoint, run 4 rounds in a single day without people being up till all hours of the night. You can run an 8-round grand tournament, no problem, and still fit it easily in 2 days with time for lunch, with time for rewards, and time for people to get home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing is the more games that you're able to fit into a tournament, the fairer the outcome generally is. When they get beyond like 40 people, I think it is, or something like that. But
absolutely. I would love to see 1,500 point games, hour-and-a-half rounds, and have 12-round tournaments.
Or even 2-hour rounds and have a,
you know
what I mean? So that way people don't have to be rushed, and that way you're not risking people like being stressed out due to time. But okay, what's next?
Next up here, so we got lots of Force Org charts. We talked about this a little bit. Basically, they're still going to be in the game. There's a few different variations of them. It's not totally clear what they necessarily are going to be.
Yeah, they were blurry. I think that was on purpose.
They seem to be sort of unique to each army was the other thing that came up, is that every army is going to have its own unique Force Org chart, which we basically have now, so it's going to be cool to see how they carry that over to a new system.
I think they're just using Force Org as their version of AOS Battalion. So I think there's going to be...
I don't know about that one, though, because the Force Orgs look like they're free, and they look like they're very generic, right? Whereas like a battalion is like, this is the units you take.
I think you're going to get some generic ones, and then you're going to get specific ones in your your battle time or whatever.
I honestly feel that we're going to see something like, in terms of the Force Org charts, if I were to deduce anything, was that we'll have like a armored spearhead Force Org chart, and a defensive line Force Org chart, and a combined arms Force Org chart. And then each one will have different command points if you build. So maybe we'll have one with like 6 fast attacks and 2 troops, or like we'll have one with 4 heavy supports and 1 elite, or like just things like that. I could see them doing something like that.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be like in the Imperial book, there's going to be a Force Org for Battle Company, and so I think they're going to reproduce some of the formations in the form of a different Force Org chart, I reckon.
Maybe, yeah.
Which would be cool.
Yeah, I could see that.
So as far as extra books, so Cities of Death, Planet Strike, Stronghold Assault, they are all going to get updated for 8th. Not at release, but they are going to be brought in. And I guess along those lines as well, the whole basis around this is that storylines are continuing. We already talked about sort of the split between Chaos and the Imperium. That's sort of the big thing. That's what Gathering Storm's been all about. But speaking of codexes and books, if you purchase a book within 8 weeks of the release of 8th edition, which we don't know yet, but sort of...
No, it was within 8 weeks of the announcement.
Which is last Saturday.
Oh, okay, cool. So, I guess we know when it's coming out then.
Because they're no longer for sale, after... So you have 1 week to buy them, and then they're all being removed.
Yeah, so they're going to be pulled off the web store, which is good. Retailers have been told for a while not to stock them anymore. But if you have proof of purchase, GW will give you credits equal to the amount you paid for your book. So you can buy new stuff when 8th comes out. Which is fantastic. That's
the best thing ever. That's like removes all the salty people. There's so many.
And you get to keep your book.
And you get to keep your book.
And you get to keep your book.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I guess the other small little stuff here that people have been sort of worried about. No, there is no shooting in and out of combat. That is not in this. There is no roll for turn initiative. So it's always back and forth, the I go, you go kind of thing, with the exception of close combat. I wonder
if it's still going to be random game length, though.
I hope so, but I think it has to be if they don't have the random turn variation like you do in AOS. Because when you know a game is going to end on a specific turn, like using current 40k as the parallel, there's just, depending on the mission, if you want to go first or second, and you know exactly what you need to do in your last 2 turns.
Or just do turn-by-turn scoring.
Yeah, if you do turn-by-turn scoring, like any sort of progressive scoring, it's less of an issue as well. Like sort of the first past the post stuff, like TFG Radio Guy's been working on. A lot of the Age of Sigmar missions used as well.
I'm just really excited to see because of all the fact that so many people have been involved in the playtesting and the and everybody who's involved in big events, like they have a lot of invested interest in making this like a good rule system.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly think I like random game length, so I hope that stays. But I guess we'll see.
Yep. That
Cool. So
pretty much wraps up what we've got here.
Oh no, we've got lots more, man.
Well, that's what we've got for Age.
They promised they're going to update it every year, like a general's handbook, which is great.
Promised? I know it said, we think this is a great idea.
Yeah,
that
was in the Q&A that they're going to try and update it regularly. Well, they said regularly, but I think people are assuming that is kind of like what they're doing with Sigmar.
Yeah.
Also, in the last couple of days, I guess they've leaked more stuff in terms of unit profiles. So 2 wound Terminators.
Oh, that's awesome! I know Terminators look a lot better.
Yeah.
I was thinking 2 was low though for them, just because I was like, Guardian's got to be 1. Terminators in 7th Ed could have 2 wounds. I was hoping for like 3 because I have a whole Terminator.
2+ save as well, though,
but 2+
really
save, and with modifiers, they've still got a decent save,
but
so they'll be tougher.
If a last cannon though does D6 wounds and only affects a model,
yeah,
if something like instant death isn't a rule anymore, for example, and it's just D6 wounds, if that last cannon, like that Terminator still has a chance of surviving like a last cannon shot.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
like fluff wise, is really cool. Like he gets beat, the last cannon rolls a 1 and he like stands back up. And he's got like 1 leg missing or whatever, but he's still like, he's still up and fighting. I think that just is cool.
And you don't need an invulnerable save, right? Because it's a last cannon, he still has a 5-up save. So you don't need a rule under Terminator armor for a 5-up invul, right?
Yep. I think we're losing all those extra kind of saves. It's just going to be modifiers.
Which is so much fun.
I would love to see tables of Terminators and Dreadnoughts again. Take me right back to the early 90s, man.
Yeah, Dreadnoughts, man. Like, I cannot wait because
they're
like
the
one of the
toughness
most
7.
8 wounds, 3+ save.
Oh man, they're like one of the most iconic units in the game. Like, it's just nice to see them kind of be thought of again.
Yeah, on average, it's 3 to 4 last cannons to not get a Dreadnought now, too, based on the stat leak. Because you're gonna so if 4 last cannons, when they hit on 3s, you're probably gonna get 3 of them hit, and then the first 2 do 7 wounds. The last one doesn't matter; he's dead. So,
and what's the save on a Dreadnought?
3+.
So he's got a 6-up save. So he's got a 6-up save on top of that. Might save 1 out of those 3, and then 2d6 wounds. So
that's
2
why I
last
said 4.
cannons.
I was covering all my bases stat-wise because I didn't feel like doing the proper math. I just said 4 probably would kill him.
Yeah, there's a good chance that 4 last cannons. But then again, if you're shooting your 4 Devastator last cannons at a Dreadnought, you'd hope they take him down. But the thing in Age of Sigmar, like if you shoot all your bowmen at Nagash, you're doing some damage.
Yeah, you're gonna kill him. Yeah,
Right?
I do like that. I do like this. Like you could actually, and then so now you have Devastators with last cannons, and the Dreadnought like drop pods in front of you. Well, the bolter guys can shoot them too. You know what I mean? Like it's not like I have these 5. Like so now you might actually see flushed out units because they can all damage them.
Yeah.
So speaking of drop pods, apparently, there's no scatter dice, so there's no more scatter. So they think that Deep Strike is just going to be like Sigmar, so you have to stay X amount of inches away from somebody, and you can do everything you want on the turn you arrive, maybe, or there might be rules like you can't charge or whatever. So that's
if you make it far enough away, like
if you make it like 9 inches,
you can let them charge. Yeah, because it's like it's a tactical risk, right? It's like
especially if there's no Overwatch.
Yeah.
Well, if we're getting into like we don't know what command points do, so you might have like, hey, this is a reserve manipulation like force org chart, and if you take this, then anything that deep strikes can charge on the turn of deep strikes, or like we don't know what this is all speculation by this point.
Yeah.
But that means that like I always thought that things that deep struck should have had the same sort of versatility and command that like something that Outflanks does, because Outflank and other reserves is pretty much the exact same thing as Deep Strike, especially Outflank, because you could kind of get in the back corners and stuff like that, but it was a lot more reliable because you weren't like liable to just drop on something and die.
Mm-hmm.
Well, from my perspective too, with the no scatter, let's say it's 9 inches because that's what Sigmar is. This is all speculation, but is that like so? From my mind, a proper smart player is going to deep strike 12 inches from every unit. He's going to scatter, so he's going to be around 9 to 12 inches away from stuff. So just by removing that scatter is just like removing 10 seconds from the game and a little bit of risk, right? But it's and then the wicked part too is like you can't be within 9 inches of me when you come in. So even if the guy screwed up his movement slightly because he's trying to go fast, you know that he needs a 9 to charge you. So there's no like, it's a 9. Well, my guy's a little bit closer. It doesn't matter. It's a 9, right? That's how Sigmar is. There's no argument because you just know it's 9. So even if the guy's 7 away from you, you're like, oh, you must have screwed up, but just roll it. You get a 9? Nope, you don't move.
Yeah. And I think that there's a foreshadowing of this with the Udway Strike Force right now in the Yanari book. You know, they just deep strike and they're 9 inches away. You know, I think that's a good foreshadow.
Yeah, that's what made me think 9 was going to be the deep strike number.
Yeah, they've got all their synergy bonuses being within 7 inches of each other or whatever, right? For strength from death.
Yeah.
So the other thing they leaked in the last couple of days was how movement's going to work, which is basically going to be Sigmar. So you move, and then if you want to run, you do it right then on a roll, or maybe they're going to have stats for run. I don't know. And then if you run, you can't charge and
can't shoot either, right?
So no, you can still shoot, I believe.
And the best part about that is that from an accuracy of measuring point of view, when you say, I'm going to move this unit, I'm going to run them, you're actually only moving that unit once.
Yeah.
You're not moving them and then moving them again, and it might not be intentional, but you're not getting those extra inches. You're not having to, it's just like, it's faster. The game's done, right?
Speeds it up too. Yeah. And so that's coming straight from Sigmar, basically.
Okay, what's up? Anything else that's being rumored? I know we had a little bit of speculation in there, but what's actually confirmed?
It is at the expense of shooting. Yeah, you cannot advance and shoot or charge.
Which makes sense. That's standard.
But I could see stuff having like, you know, they hinted at the fact that jet bikes won't have turbo boosts anymore, but they can also run. You know, jet bike like bikes can run as well. But I love the fact that it'll be on a model to model basis. If they want a model to be able to run and shoot, it'll be in their unit entry. Yeah. If there's this like Eldar jet bikes, they can run and shoot. You know, they don't have turbo boost, but they're mobile and they can stay active and be a part of the game even if they're super mobile.
And they'll probably move 16 inches, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the models in Age of Sigmar, just like they can charge after running, like some cavalry units, you know, or they can shoot after running, you know, like some of the chariots or some of the like undead like horse archers or stuff like that. Like they can still shoot even if they run, you know, like yeah.
Oh no, I agree. I like that a lot. Yeah,
and I've been corrected. Sorry, it says you can't shoot. It does not say you cannot run and charge. But again, this is just what's come out on the website.
And they did say that you could charge out of vehicles. That was a thing that was confirmed.
Yeah.
So there's no more assault vehicle rule. Now I'm sure there'll be some vehicles like a flyer. You can't charge out of this, but that's going to be probably on a tank-by-tank basis.
Now, that said, with the Caradron Overlords in AOS, they've been the first thing to get vehicles in that. Don't they have a rule that when you disembark from a vehicle, you still have to be over X inches away from an enemy?
Well, you always have to be 3 inches away in Age of Sigmar.
3 inches away, okay. So
do you think that'll make
that's period, though. That's movement phase. You can never move it.
I think there's something further they added in the sky ships. Maybe somebody in chat can point it out that's a bit more familiar with it. But I think there's something where you have to be set up like the 7 or 8 inches away again.
With the overlords, like in the hero phase, they can disembark, and they all have to be within 3 inches of the tank. Okay. Like they have to be within 3 inches.
Oh, so
it's like the disembark rate. Yeah, and then they can move and act and charge normally. So if there's anything that's coming from that, like I could see something like that happening. But, you know, we can probably, who knows? The 40K universe is so diverse, and they've given themselves so much room to really put in, like, unique flavor to each individual model. Being like,
there won't be a generic rule that says you can't charge. It'll be like, in the entry.
Yeah. This is a Dark Eldar Raider. You can move and get out of it. You know, like, or this is a super fast tank, or this is a really slow tank. Or, you know, I'm very giddy about this. I just want to read it now. And I hate like making, you know, wish listing stuff because then I read it and I'm like, not exactly what I envisioned. but still, I'm
But it's
pumped.
fun. It's
yeah,
fun.
it's fun.
So I just got two more things. So first of all, they did say that Forge World will be getting 8th edition rules.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that actually is kind of overseen by the same people, and so they become more consistent with the rest of the game.
Sure hope so.
Well, it wasn't Sigmar. Forge World released the rules, but they were in the app, so it's still written by them, I believe, but it's in the app, and then the points in Sigmar, are controlled by the GW team.
Yeah,
I
so I'm
believe,
hoping it'll be like more
In the
controlled
app.
like that, because I like to use my Custodes Dreadnoughts. And then the final thing I got is that they said Maelstrom missions will still be in the game. So because they haven't mentioned really what the missions are going to be like, but they seem to like Maelstrom. So
I like Maelstrom. I enjoy it. I don't like the ITC roll and do. I like the cards, and I like toned down card
You
decks. but
actually
that's
like the Maelstrom out of the book? That's like
I like the ETC version.
okay.
Where
That's
it's
nothing
certain
even
cards.
remotely like Maelstrom.
But that's
out
what I
of
was
the book.
saying. Like I like toned down, cleaned up cards. Like
I love Maelstrom.
Oh, Maelstrom
Or-
is like don't. I
Out of
say
the
this,
book's
I
too random
enjoy
for me.
gaming with the guys at Mini Wargaming, but when I go there, it's to have fun, shoot the shit, and roll dice. The game outcome is 100% determined by what cards get drawn. It's not
100%.
It's not
100%,
competitive
but
at
that-
all.
Like, I'll tell you, well, it isn't competitive, but I mean, like, when I'm playing a brand new guy,
Oh yeah,
and
it's fun for like
and
beer
he's
gamer.
and you just exactly, and you
Yeah.
like it's a really entertaining game. It's like playing a video game but on the table.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, again,
But you could make it competitive by toning down the deck. Like the ETC deck is very competitive because most of those cards are achievable most games.
yeah, the ETC
Or
deck
most turns.
version is pretty good. I prefer that. I prefer that to the ITC version of it. I think. Again, this is the cool thing about having this approach. I know I've sort of poo-pooed it in the past with having all the rules be specific to the different data slates and stuff. The one cool thing that this gives you is the fact that you don't have to have these massive tournament packs, right? You can go to an event and the flavor is in the missions, and that's really cool because if you compare ETC missions to ITC missions and just think for a second if they had the same comp pack, whichever one it may be, you'd still take completely differently designed armies to each of them, right?
And that
because
fragments the
scenarios work
community,
differently.
man. Like that's why one thing I find about Age of Sigmar is a lot of people are criticizing us is that we're always playing, not criticizing me, but people are getting bored of the General's Handbook generic 6 missions.
Yes.
But everybody knows how to play them and builds the same army. Whereas the problem is right now that I'm finding is like we play so much ITC that when we go into an ETC environment, I have no friggin' clue what's good.
Yeah, it's
and
very
it takes
foreign.
me hours and hours. So if they're releasing a General's Handbook every year with 6 new tournament missions written by GW, I think that keeps the entire community kind of together and in one meta. And I think that's good for everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to do that, but that sounds good.
I think we'll probably see people stick to it at least for, like, assuming it comes out in June. I think there's a reasonable expectation that we're going to see a lot of tournaments run it at least for the 2017 ITC season. I know that's my plan for Bloodbath and for the Power Fist and Psychers events. Unless they're like completely terrible, then we're not going to do it. But
even if they are, it's the
we're
new.
going to run it for a while, right?
Everybody's going to play them. So
Yeah.
in 3 months from the edition, that's what everybody's going to know how to do,
exactly.
right?
And it's the best way to get into the new edition to figure stuff out. Like, this is what was in mind when they designed it. I just hope we don't see a repeat of, like, the Relic. Like, the really, or Emperor's Will. Like, the terrible missions that came with 7th. But if they're more fleshed out, like the Age of Sigmar ones, as far as I can tell, I mean, Chris, you've got more. You guys, all three.
Only
you
one
have
of them
more
was
experience.
poor. Only one of them was
Yeah.
poorly done, and they errated it completely. They removed the entire
Which one?
deployment section. Escalation.
Escalation.
Oh, okay.
So it's the one where you split your army, and there's all these questions.
I've only played Gift from the Heavens lately.
That's the best one, in my
I love
opinion.
it.
That's
really
the
fun.
random place where the objective lands.
Yeah. Random
Yeah.
meteor, yeah.
But
And
it
then-
only lands in one of 3 places. One
Yeah,
of 3
okay.
places, one of
On
3.
your
That's
side
it.
of the
Like
board.
that's it. Yeah.
And then you each have one, and it's about controlling
Okay.
it.
So it's Emperor's Will that is randomly placed.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so I
So
mean,
you can't
if they're
recommend.
able to continue that same thing, especially if they're errating that's great. I think we're in for a really good run with this for at least the next year.
Oh, I'm super pumped. 8th edition. Like, I know I was a bit salty in trying to give my, that's just like my opinion. But I'm like 100% on board. This is gonna be awesome. I'm not like I have zero negativity for it. I'm super pumped.
Yeah.
There's some things that I wish, but it's also
Yeah.
it's just gonna be so good to have a new edition to clean up. And as Scary said, the number one thing is I can't. Like so many people quit when 7th dropped, not necessarily because of the edition, but they had kids. Like friends of mine had kids, or they just dropped out. To play WoW or something, and then they want to get back into 7th edition for the last year.
It's daunting.
But they can't. I'm like, I don't even know how to tell you to get back in. I have no clue where to start.
So, like, that's the crazy thing. So, I've got a buddy who just started playing 40K, and it took him, and he's a smart guy. He's actually been on our channel for battle reports. Like,
if he's your buddy, he's not that smart. Let's put it that way.
I love you too, Chris. Anyway, he's a competent player for a new guy. But it literally took months of chatting to figure out how to build a friggin' list in 7th edition.
And he's lucky that you have access to all the books and the knowledge base.
Exactly.
That's the thing, too. Like, if you're getting into it with your buddy, like 2 kids, if I was like a dad of 2 13-year-olds, I knew nothing, I wouldn't even know where to start with 40K. Whereas Sigmar, it's like, there's your one book, or you don't even need a book, buy 3 units from the same army, and just play them.
Yeah,
right?
Subscribe to Azir, pray the bugs don't get you, and you're good to go. Yeah.
So is that it for 8th edition rumors? We can move on?
I think that's everything we got.
I think so.
I think that's that.
So we'll move on to Event Spotlight. We don't have much to plug. CCBB is in August. Do you want to talk about that, Logan?
Yeah, so we've got 40K doubles and singles, Age of Sigmar doubles and singles, Batman miniatures game doubles and singles, Hobbit doubles and singles, War Machine Masters, which I believe is a War Machine weekend invite qualifier, something like that. Info's on the website.
Yep.
And we've got War Machine Who's the Boss. It is August 18th, 20th at the EY Center here in Ottawa, Ontario, right next to the airport. If you are flying in, it is literally 2 minutes on a bus. There's shuttles that go there. There's a hotel directly across the street from it. It could not be easier to travel to get here. Yeah, check that out. It's capitalcitybloodbath.com. Tickets are already all on sale there. If you have any questions at all, please email us, canhammer.podcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about the Capital City Bloodbath. I'm just going to throw in this extra plug. I am going to be there, and I'm pumped. I'm very excited to be there. I know my sponsor from the UK, War Games UK, is going to be there.
Yeah.
So Martin's coming down, and he's actually coming down a week before, and we're going to hang out and play some games, and then head up to the capital city. It's going to be great.
Nice. And next, for the note of releases, actually, we should talk about this real quick. If 8th edition 40K and or the General's Handbook 2.0 are out by July 15th, we will be using them. So that gives everybody about a month to get everything up to speed for it, playtest things, but just be aware July 15th is the cutoff for those.
Yeah, we're not interested in playing old editions after the fact.
Yeah.
So the next event we got is we got the AOS Day of Blood. It's actually sold to 17 tickets out of 20. It's hard capped at 20. And I know that there's about 5 people that have told me that they want to come and have not paid. So I would pay right now because we're about to sell out any minute now. And that's May 20th, $20, 2,000 points at Multi-Zone in Gatineau. We're doing 3 rounds, General's Handbook missions, because we have about 10 returning fantasy players.
Yeah.
That this will be their first event, so we want to go super out of the book to accommodate them.
And this is really cool as well. We got 17 people for this. We tried to run an Age of Sigmar event, like August last year? And we had 1 sign up. Like, that's how much this game has grown in just 8 or 9 months. It's amazing.
Well, the General's Handbook went a long way. Like, even Capital City Sigmar went from Fantasy 40, which is our first year ever, right down to 10, and then it was like 20, and then now it could be 40, like with the way in which it's growing. Cool. So we're going to go on to our main segment, which I know some people are just going to want to tune out right now because they're done with 7th edition, but we feel that if people took the time to email us, we're going to pimp their lists. We have about 4 or 5 remaining 7th ed lists, and we're gonna get back to doing 1 a show. So, but until 8th edition drops, we're only going to, from now on, we're only doing Age of Sigmar lists for the Pimp My List segment. We're going to do more Age of Sigmar shows, obviously. We've been saying that a while, but it's going to happen. So do you want to take the first one, Logan, as it's right up your alley as a Tau player?
Well, it's a little bit Tau. So this is from John. He's got a list that is a Riptide Wing, Company of the Great Wolf Detachment, and an Eldar CAD. So I've seen this thrown around a few times before, with sort of the Eldar and then the Thunderwolf Star, and this is definitely a decent way to do it. So he's got 3 Riptides, all with burst cannons and interceptor. He's got a Wolfguard battle leader running runic armor, power fist, storm shield on the Thunderwolf. An Iron Priest, 2 of the old Iron Priests here, both on Thunderwolves. And then a unit of Thunderwolf Cav with 5, and a pack leader, all with storm shields. And the pack leader, actually none of them have special weapons. They've just got the rending swords. Void shield generator, Autarch on a bike, and then 5 units of triple scat bikes.
Well, you can't go wrong with 5 units of scat bikes that are OBSEC.
Yeah.
I think, as strange as this sounds, the Riptides are the odd man out for this. I've seen a lot of people have success with the Thunderwolf Star and Eldar, just because it's that in-your-face, like, run at you and break things thing that you have to shoot at, and it gives you really, really strong area denial on the ground. Taking Riptides is never a bad thing, but with Burst Tides especially, and Darren, you can probably talk to this a bit as well, if they don't have the support for them, I feel like they can be really hard to use super effectively in a list. The Interceptor against you, I don't think really matters that much. The reason I say that is this is really good against stuff like CanHammer or really heavy reserve manipulation armies, and realistically the stuff in your army doesn't have to worry about that. You've got the Autarch, so you've already got the opportunity for that beta strike and the reserve manipulation, and that Thunderwolf unit, if you use the points for the Riptides in a different way, it's already tough as nails, and you can make it that much more scary to deal with, that you don't even have to have that Interceptor. And realistically, if you're taking these for Interceptor purposes, which is my guess, plus the fact that Riptides, you don't get the formation bonus from Interceptor. You're not getting that bonus ballistic skill. You've got no marker lights, and realistically, your Interceptor is going to be causing you to take wounds from Gets Hot. It's only hitting on 4+. And if you're rending, fantastic. But realistically, you need 3 Riptides to kill like that one unit of Grav Centurions or something that's dropping in with CanHammer. So I think those could probably be better spent tweaking some of the stuff in the Company of the Grey Wolf detachment, and fleshing out the Eldar CAD a little more. With 500 points, you can toss in another. What was that, Chris? Yeah, toss in a Wraith Knight. Yeah, Wraith Knight, absolutely.
Because then you could kind of use the Wraith Knight to counter the Death Star on Death Star with your Wolf Star. You could also use the D shots at range, because you'll probably go with the shooting one in this list, because you could probably use some more at range stuff. And then it also protects your Riptides from things like Screamer Stars, tying them down.
You wouldn't take it. You'd be dropping the Riptides for this, I think.
Completely?
Yeah.
I think so. You need the points.
Yeah.
I think it's always tempting to throw a Riptide wing in. I'm a perfect example of that. And the more I play with Riptide thrown into something, the more I think that maybe that 555 points could have really beefed the original list up. And in this case, I would agree with Logan. I think it's a little bit. It is the odd man out, even though Riptide wing is strong. I think with 555 points, you could definitely beef with a Wraith Knight. You could have more bikes, or you could beef the Space Wolves side up. Add some Wolfen. If you're going to go charging in there with a bunch of hard to kill, mash you in the face guys, then add a murder pack, and there you go. And then if they manage to survive that, they've got scat bikes to deal with and a Wraith Knight. So.
What were you saying?
Yeah, Tori, who's one of the local Eternal Warriors, usually plays a list very similar to this on a regular basis, with Wolf Thunderwolves in support of scat bikes, and then instead of the Riptide wing, he usually runs either a Fen Wolf pack of a bunch of Fen Wolves with just a character in there to make them fearless. So it's just a big bunch of wounds that can use for board denial, and he either uses a Wraith Knight in the Eldar CAD, or he runs Wolven in drop pods, so that they just to put pressure on the enemy right off the bat.
Yeah,
I like if you're going for a more holdy style, then I think throwing in like a little mini Bark Star with that 500 points would be quite effective as well. Yeah.
And the other thing that I found interesting in here is you've got the Void Shield generator, and that with the Thunderwolf pretty much protects you against any Alpha Strike. And I feel if you've got that in there, you definitely don't need those Riptides. I don't think it's really needed at all. And if you did take a different approach with it, one thing you can do if you really want to protect yourself against that Alpha Strike is you can even take the Thunderwolf Cav, keep them in reserves. You're pretty much guaranteed to get them turn 2 with the Autarch. I mean, it's a 2+ to get them in. But you can also use some of the points if you were going to take away the Riptides. You could toss in a Wraith Knight, any variety really, and bring in the 1 or 2 or even 2 units of Quad Mortars. And the Quad Mortar is what you toss the characters, so the 2 Iron Priests and the other dude, the Wolfguard Battle Leader. They can just join that unit, and now they're toughness 7 to be shot against, and they've all got 2+ saves. It's very, very strong denial against getting Alpha Struck, especially with the Void Shield there as well. It makes them damn near invincible. So it's something to consider, and also if you split them up again, now you've got majority armor save of 3+ instead of 2+. I guess the Thunderwolf Cav are 3+ anyway. But it's something to play around with. I think at the end of it, you'd be better off putting your points into Eldar than the Riptides for this. But that would be my 2 cents.
Sounds good. So I guess we'll move on to Jesse's list.
Jesse, so Chris, why don't you lead this off? You're our resident expert on sisters, I think.
I'm not an expert. I'll give that. I've played them several times, and I think I've only won like 2 out of like.
You won a tournament with your sisters. What are you talking about?
But basically, it's a Canoness with the Mantle of Ophelia and Rosarius, Inquisitor Codiez, collects his assassin. He has it listed under elites, but that would be a separate formation.
Yeah.
Troops, 4 units of sisters in rhinos with combi plasmas and 2 meltas. And then he has fast attack. He has 5 units of dominions, and then he has 2 exorcists. The dominions have 4 meltas and 3 of the units in rhinos, and then he has combi plasmas and 2 meltas in 2 other units. So I'm assuming, the way he's got it written down is illegal. I'm assuming it's.
This might be the
2
Castellans.
2 cads. Must be 2 cads.
Is it Castellan? Yeah. Is it Castellan?
It must be Castellans because you can't have Codiaz as an HQ for a second Sisters CAD.
That's what. So I didn't know because he didn't specify. So if it's Castellans, it's probably fine.
I think this might be Castellans.
I think you only have 3 fast attack in a Castellan. You can't have more than 3 fast attack. So it must be a CAD and a Castellan, like 2 different, and then an Inquisitorial detachment.
Or it could be 2 CADs, an assassin detachment. The new one's pretty good because if you kill the enemy's warlord, you get a bonus point, and then it could also just be an Inquisitorial detachment. So it could be 4.
Yeah, maybe we're just missing something.
Sorry, Jesse, we don't know how you got to. You have to check it for legality, but all in all, it's pretty good. The Canoness is a standard HQ. She's pretty cheap.
She's what, like 100 points?
Yeah, like you could probably even get rid of her upgrades.
Get rid of her and Kotiaz and take Celestine.
Yeah.
I don't think you take Kodiaz unless you're playing Castellans.
So that was going to be my first point. Is why would even this list? So the thing that Kodiaz does is he gives you reroll to seize and reroll seize against. You're not really, because you have a lot of dominions, they can outflank and they can scout. So you're not too worried. Like if you know you're going first, you could be up on the line and you could scout forward. Or if you're going second, you could probably just outflank them and be safe. You could play that null deploy game. He allows one unit to kind of like intercept within 12 inches, and they can do it multiple times. But you don't really have a unit that's really that great at intercepting either.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, I would just drop Kodiaz. I don't think he fits this list.
Yep.
He's nice in like a Devastator style unit or like a Centurion unit, something with a lot of range that you're scared of people coming in and kind of putting pressure on. But all in all, it's pretty good. Now, I ran a list similar to this.
Replace the Calexis with Sisters
of Silence.
Yeah.
So that's half a dozen, one or the other. You could do 2 Sisters of Silence and 2 Rhinos, bump them up, have more board control.
Yeah.
Calexis is still really good because he denies kill points. And so what I was going to say is when you have the sister squads with the Rhinos, you're actually paying a premium. You got 4 Rhinos, 4 sister units, 8 kill points for your arbitrary core. So I was thinking, personally, I would drop the Rhinos on the Sisters, keep them as what they are. They're cheap troop units that are OBSEC for the backfield in reserve. They're not going to be able to keep up with the Dominions, and they shouldn't even try to. They're kind of your way to... you could even give them like a multi-melta, put them in terrain, and just kind of chill back on foot. Because with the Dominions, 2 of the units aren't fully kitted out with meltas. Now, they're the butter of this list, because... I don't even know if that's a real thing. I think I fucking said something stupid there. But they ignore cover if you pass a leadership check. So
Drop
in
some
units
combi
that ignore
plasmas.
cover, put the Melta guns in. And I would even put combi Meltas. I would put, if you're going to run 5 Dominion squads, do 5 Dominion squads, 4 Meltas in every one of them. Rhinos are fine. And then combi plasmas in all of them. So take those points that you'll save from the Rhinos from the regular sister units and do that. If you're taking double CAD too, and you could even... So if you drop all 4 Rhinos, you might even be able to get a 6th unit of Dominions in.
Well, you can drop all 4 Rhinos, combi plasmas, and meltas. If you're running the true battle sisters as just backfield objective holders, which is fine, they're like 60 points or 5 or whatever, and then you split into 2 combined arms detachments. Not only do you get a 6 Dominion unit in there, I'm pretty sure you could add in another Exorcist as well.
Yeah, so that's what you'd want to do.
That'd be good.
The Exorcists are hit or miss, though, to be honest. The Dominions are priority. And to kit them out, like, literally 6 units of Dominions with 5 Melta guns, scouting and outflanking, ignoring cover. It's going to mess stuff up, especially with the Calexis.
Yeah.
It actually lowers your kill points by 4, not by 4, by 2 on the total list as well. So
to be fair, I mean, these are sisters. I don't think kill point denial is really worth discussing too much.
I got stuck on kill points because I took I went to a tournament and they had secondaries all kill points for every mission, and I took my 5-man sister units in Rhinos, and the Rhinos, like, so what I would do is sit them on a back objective for OBSEC, and my Rhinos just gave away kill points or first blood every game.
Yeah.
So to me it was kind of frustrating, but
yeah, I guess it depends on the missions. What I was going to say though is if you're not concerned about the kill points, if you take out the Calexis and Kodiaz, that's 240 points. That actually gives you an extra 60 points already to work with if you replace that with 2 units of Sisters and Rhinos. So you're coming out way ahead there.
Yep. I think this submitted before Talons of the Emperor came out?
It's
okay.
Likely, yes, because that was just 2 or 3 weeks ago.
That's I would run them as double CAD because you want the 5 OBSEC Sisters in the backfield. Yep. And you don't really care about the rest. And Saint Celestine, she is nice in this list too. I don't know if you'd like. You could even use her to protect one of your 5-man units in the backfield, but she's not.
She's pricey for a non-Death Star use.
She's just going to be by herself, right?
Like, with the Rosarius and the Mantle, you might as well spring for the extra points. Is how I feel.
Yeah, or
you just go cheap, go naked Canonist. Yeah. That's an option as well. Okay, so next we have Jay. You want to take that one away?
Yeah. So this is Jay's Super Falcon punch list. He actually played this against me in a battle report not too long ago.
Yeah. And that went up yesterday. Today. Yesterday.
Yeah, a couple days
went
ago.
up.
Yeah. So he's got Ravenwing Strike Force with Samael, a Librarian on bike with Master Level 2, Conversion Field, and Auspex. Dark Shroud with an Assault Cannon. 2 units of 3 Ravenwing Bikers with 2 Grav Guns in each. 2 units of 3 Black Knights. And then a Ravenwing Command Squad with an Apothecary and Melta Bombs. And then for his second detachment, he's got a Skyhammer Annihilation Force, a unit of Devastators with 4 Grav Cannons and a Drop Pod, unit Devastators, both 10-man, with 2 Grav Cannons and 2 Multi-Meltas in a Drop Pod. And then 2 units of 5 Assault Marines with a Flamer and a Sergeant with a Melta Bomb, all with jump packs. So, having played against this, the first thing I would suggest is... I don't even know. I actually lost this game. It was... So, spoilers if you haven't seen the battle report. It's actually a surprisingly strong list. It doesn't necessarily seem like it on
paper. Did we lose Logan?
What's that?
Did I lose all of you?
Can everyone else hear me?
I can hear you.
You're back.
You're all. Nobody left me, so...
Okay. So as long as Chris has the recording, that's what matters. So I think the only thing that may be slightly overkill in this list... what's up, Chris?
No, go. Keep
Okay.
going.
The only thing that may be overkill on this list that really didn't do much is Samael. All your stuff already has hit and run that matters. The tankiness on him
Celestine, man.
is not really worth it. Yeah, so it would be tough to fit Celestine in this, but if you can, she'd be a better use of the points, I think.
Yeah, so I was thinking of running a list like this when I was heavy playing my Raven Wing. I was trying to think, what can I put my Raven Wing? And I thought, well, Skyhammer would be nice. I thought, and that was before Celestine came out. And I think Celestine is a straight swap in for Samael because she's better,
In every way.
she's harder to kill, and she's the same points. You can't run the Raven Wing Strike Force, unfortunately, but every time I ran that, I hardly ever used the special ability thing, especially if you have a Skyhammer keeping your opponent busy. They're not going to be shooting your bikes, right? So,
but he's doing it because he can't really afford the 2 scout units in the CAD. That's what I think.
you don't have to take
Yeah,
Well,
the
regardless,
bikers are
it's
fast
two
attack
troop
unless you take the strike force.
I think what you do is you drop the grav guns on the bikers. You've got enough grav already. If you drop a couple of grav guns, maybe cut out 1 Black Knight, that's enough for 2 scout squads right there. And then your scouts can outflank onto side objectives. They're very useful, 2 scout units. And then you don't have to worry about your bikes having to turbo boost across the board to get objectives. If you place your objectives well, your scouts can hold things the whole game, right?
Yep.
And then you've got pods coming in holding things, so that's very strong. And I think Celestine is just so much better than Samael, and for the same points.
So I have a dumb question. Can you put characters in a Skyhammer's drop pod with the Devastators?
Yeah,
You can, but they can't.
yeah, sort of.
They don't get.
Sort
Yeah.
So
Sort of.
with the Battle Brother change, you'd have to have a Space Marine character go in it, the same faction. So you can, for example, put a Hunter's Eye guy in there, but they'd lose all the benefits, right? You would no longer have Relentless. You'd no longer have XYZ.
Yeah, because part of me is like the thing I hate about Skyhammer is that when you play Tau, if it happens, they'll intercept you and they'll blow you out of the water when you come in. And then the other thing is. You can kind of choose to come in first or second, but you have to bring a lot in. So sometimes it's better off just taking a captain in Cataphracti armor in a unit of Devastators with maybe a few empty pods. That way you can kind of choose when it comes in. But all in all, Skyhammer's terrifying. I get really scared when I play Skyhammer that I'm going to get tabled. So
it's
The other thing I don't like.
mentioned the interceptors. So I think this is actually like the best case scenario for that. So when I played against this, I intercepted really heavily. I actually killed all but 1 grav gun, and Jay thought that was the game right there. But because he had those bikes right behind it, he just killed like half my army the next turn. It's a really strong follow-up. It actually makes interceptor incredibly risky to do.
Yeah.
So I changed my opinion. You keep the grav guns, get rid of the librarian. I'm very
librarian did
unimpressed
nothing
by
in
a
that
single
game.
librarian.
Yeah,
It
did
never
nothing.
does.
Well, you would take the librarian instead of Samuel, right? Because in your detachment, you need an HQ. You gotta take a tech marine or a librarian, right?
Yes.
So I would maybe tone down the librarian to like a level 1, take away some of his upgrades, give him Auspex is fine,
Actually,
and get rid of Samuel.
No,
and then you could put in anything else.
You just have to take a character on a bike with the FAQ. So I think Samuel fills out what you need.
No, so we were replacing Samuel with Celestine.
So you'd have to switch this to a cat
instead of
anyway.
librarian. Instead of librarian,
Just
take a tech marine.
Well, if you switch it to if you want Celestine, you have to.
It doesn't
switch it to a
fit.
cat.
It doesn't fit.
So you'd have to
You'd
drop
have
the
to fit the
librarian and
cat.
put the scouts in if you want to keep the grav guns on the.
Yeah, but
So drop the librarian.
Yeah, drop the
So all in
librarian,
all,
take the
it's-
scouts, and you're good to go.
it's a solid list.
It's
is what
very
we're saying.
solid. It's very strong. There are a couple lists will give you a really hard time. Anything that's immune to grav will just like piss right in your cornflakes. But
Yeah,
you've
but
got
there's
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
plasma.
plasma
would be,
A lot of
you
the
should get a little
plasma
bit sneakier, and I would take an Inquisitor with serval skulls to make it so that your assault marines can get in there and charge stuff and tie it in, because then they only scatter d6 inches. So you could just do 1 Inquisitor, 3 serval skulls. It also keeps them back, which means maximum benefit from your Skyhammer, and then your scouts can guaranteed go off, and then your assault marines are more likely to charge the turn they come in.
And actually, if you did that, so you've got room for the 1 more detachment, you drop the librarian, you take your 2 units of scouts, you drop your 2 melt-a-bombs off the assault marines, or 1 off the apothecary, and you're already down. Actually, yeah, you drop it off the command squad. there you go. Your third detachment fits perfectly, and you're at 1849 points with the Inquisitor with the 3 servo skulls. So
I don't really have much to say about this list because I don't really have much experience playing with an army like this. But I have played against an army very similar. I'm not too scared about Skyhammer, but those knights are brutal.
Yeah, Black Knights are like so good. So we have the last list is another Tau list. So I guess as our Tau expert, Logan, you can take it away.
All right, let me find this in here. All right.
From Mark.
So this is from Mark. He says, recently discovered the podcast. He's been enjoying the ones he's listened to. He has a Tau list he wants us to pimp. He's taking it to Nova. So Nova has some pretty unique missions. So this is a list which I think is very optimized for the type of missions that are going to be there. So we've got a commander with a flamer, onager gauntlet, vectored retro thrusters, and iridium armor, and 2 marker drones. Then we've got 6 individual crisis suits with flamers and bonding knife ritual as the troops. So those are 6 OBSEC crisis suits, 3 individual tetras, and then a unit of 3 storm surges, all with pulse blast cannons, shield generator, twin bursting fragmentation projectors, and skyfire. And then a unit of vigilators, which are the Great Blade Sisters, in a Null Maiden Rhino.
You lost me at 3 storm surges.
So I think this is the way.
And they're all independent. It's 3 CADs, we're correct?
No, it's one unit of 3 storm surges.
1 unit of 3.
It's
okay.
1,300 points in a single unit. So that unit is actually really scary because
it is scary.
I'm not
terrifying.
a huge fan of the pulse blast cannon, but in Nova's comp where they run uncomp D, it's actually pretty damn strong. Same with ETC. The blast cannon, especially with Skyfire, is really like you just remove Magnus. It's stupid good. Now my concerns with this are the commander. You may just want to take this guy bare bones and just toss him with a crisis suit. The tanking doesn't really help. The vectored retro thrusters does nothing. For the 2 marker drones, what I might suggest, and I know your goal here is to go sort of MSU scoring, is to maybe peel off one of the tetras and use those points to put a couple of the crisis suits together in one unit. Even if you keep the weapons, not that great, but just toss marker drones in there as upgrades because they keep that low point cost for 12 points of marker drone, so you're able to get a more sort of reliable and sturdy base for the marker lights rather than tetras, which will just die from a stiff breeze. And that starts putting the other stuff like the vectored retro thrusters to better use in the iridium armor, because otherwise he's just sort of sitting there with 1 crisis suit, not doing too much, but holding an objective. Which isn't bad, but I think if you're gonna be spending the points on crisis suits for more than just the 2 minimum ones, you want them to be doing work.
If you're gonna go for those single crisis suits, I highly recommend you take one of those Imperial containers.
Oh, the armored container cache.
Yeah, because those little barrels are really good for crisis flamers.
Yeah, it gives you torrent on them,
but then
right?
they have to stand there, right?
If you're sitting backfield, it's not bad. Well, the container is actually taller than the suits, so they can hide behind it as well, which is nice, depending on how you model them.
That's true, but it's more about putting it in a central position and then having your suits deep strike near these barrels, and then suddenly have a torrent flamer near a barrel that can affect the game.
Yep. And it's good with the storm surges as well because you're taking the blast cannon. If something does get close, you've got that reroll 1s on your shooting with the D shots, which can be pretty nice. Now, the one thing I would say is instead of the air bursting fragmentation projectors on the storm surges, take the twin linked burst cannons. The frag projector is great with the barrage, and it's the same range, but with the uncomped invis that Nova runs, you may be better off just taking the burst cannons. It's going to average out to a very similar number of hits. The barrage is the one thing you're giving up, but the burst cannon lets you use it for everything, right? If you want to shoot at something that's invisible so you can charge it and shoot all your other stuff somewhere else, you can now do that.
That's the good one.
If you want to,
because you're going to want this unit to charge a Death Star.
That's the thing. Like this will stomp out Death Stars. It's got enough wounds. It's got enough spacing that it's almost counter meta to how Nova because Nova's generally pretty Death Star heavy. This can help out a lot. Now, the one thing that's going to give you a really bad time is going to be Eldar lists, I think. Again, with uncomped D, with the stuff they've got access to, and the fact that you've got no interceptor in this list at all, a single unit of Wraithguard in a Raider is just going to remove your Storm Surges. Like, there's a good chance of that happening with the D Wraithguard, not the D Scythe Wraithguard, the D cannon ones. But likewise, a Wraith Knight with a lucky shot's going to drop a huge chunk of your army, and Scat Bikes will just whittle these things down like crazy too. A good 5 or 6 units of Scat Bikes will take out a Storm Surge a turn, and you really have no answer to it unless you're right next to them because of the range of the weapons.
Yeah, that's not huge. So I just want to. The only thing is I looked at this and I went, if you're going to take the Sisters of Silence, you're going to want 2 units in Rhinos or go to a Calexis. That way the Calexis can keep up and survive with the Storm Surges, because in a Magnus-rich environment, you want them alive near your Storm Surges because they'll take off the rest of your stuff. So part of me was thinking, play the counter kill point game, go down to 2 Crisis Suits. I don't like the Tetris personally, and maybe just play it as it is, an aggressive fighting Death Star hunting list. The other option too would be you take the Piranha Wing, and that way you can use the drones that they create to funnel, to stop Death Stars in the turns you don't want them near you, to funnel units and stop them from engaging you by just pumping out those drones. Now, they don't score, but they also don't give kill points away, so it's kind of hit or miss. But it's crazy. It's just like, and with D is what it is. Like, I've D-beamed double Storm Surge units and done like 2 wounds. Yeah. Like, and never killed a Storm. Like, it took me 4 turns to kill a Storm Surge, and then other times you kill them both like in 2 turns or a turn. So that's a D problem. And I know the edition's over, but it's a D problem. So you don't really have to worry about it because the guy either rolls a 6 or he doesn't. And you're not going to see a lot of 10-man Wraithguard units, or like a 5-man might hurt you a little bit, and then you just charge them.
Yeah, 5-man can do some work. It's a throwaway. Like, I think that the main scary thing is the Scat Bikes. As Chris said, though, if you're running Sisters, find a way to take 2 units.
In Rhinos.
Yeah. In Rhinos, yeah.
Well, it'll beef them up. It'll beef that bubble up too, which is super important. But those 3 Storm Surges, don't be shy with them.
No,
like you need to get
walk straight up.
You need to get in people's faces with that stuff, and just destroy things.
Maybe not against a Wolfen player. A Wolfen player, you might want to keep your distance and shoot, but any other Death Star, you want to go in.
I'd say go in and stomp. Just roll those 6s.
I don't know if you fought Wolfen in combat. You know what those things do to people?
Yeah,
they might kill 2 Storm Surges.
They're pretty brutal, but if there's no Wolfen left and 1 Storm Surge left with 1 wound, you still win.
That's true.
Yeah, I suppose that's one way to look at it. I think that'd be the feedback. It is a really interesting counter meta list for Nova.
I like it. I actually like it. It's different, and I hate Riptides. So let's move on to question and answer. Do we have any questions?
So if you're in the chat and you want to toss in some Q&A, feel free to shoot. I don't think we got anything. We sort of announced this pretty late with a jump, and everyone's been keeping up with the 8th edition stuff, so I'm not sure if we got too many questions. I didn't see anything on Facebook or Twitter. But maybe
surely Jeff's got at least 5 questions.
I hope so.
Yeah, so we're actually recording on a different night than normal because we had some stuff come up earlier in the week, so we canceled our show last minute, about an hour before, and then we just kind of rebooked it 2 days later. So
yeah. So we do have a question in chat from Jeff. What do you think the chapter tactics will be for 8th? So they have confirmed that they're keeping chapter tactics. I suspect they're going to be sort of similar to the Allegiance abilities in AOS, so take that for what you will. The other thing that I foresee, based on some of the info that's been trickling out, is it's entirely possible they're going to be one-use only abilities. Kind of like
it's going to be
now, but I think that's not unlikely.
I think it's going to be like the Chambers in the Stormcast book.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something like in where it's like, if you take it, you take everything within like the sub thing you pay points for. And I'm assuming it'll be very similar to what it is now. Like Iron Hands will probably have some kind of additional save, like a 6-up additional save, and so on. So
I hope.
Yeah, I think.
I hope it's something that says it's like a keyword-based mechanic that'll give them the special rule like ultramarine, and I hope it is linked with paint job.
Paint job.
Please no.
So I think the Caradron overlords have a similar mechanic.
You know, the ports, right?
Yeah, depending on how they're like they just get different little bonuses, but it's based on their different where they come from.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know. I think you're still going to see like purple marines that can do the best chapter tactics.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like, that came up with this,
successor chapter.
that came up with the Stormcast, right? They're like, do you have like, because of course it's a new thing. Do you have to paint them the right warrior chamber? And it's no, you don't have to.
No. All right, moving on.
Be nice.
What do you think the average marine point cost will be? Will it continue 14 or more? I think we're going to see point costs. I think they're mostly going to go up. I think the game is going to be going to a smaller scale. Hopefully, going to a slightly smaller scale anyway.
I think your Marine tac squad will be your battle line for 120. You get maybe I don't know.
I think it'll be more like 150. To be honest, if you look at
10 of them, something.
But the scale's going to be different. So if they're saying 2-hour games, 2-hour games 2,000 points, then there's no way a Marine's going to cost 14 points. It's going to cost 18 points or 20 points because there's no way you can just move that many models, even with a simplified rule set in that time period. So I don't know. I kind of believe that you're going to see everything go up. And
I think so. What I'd love to see is if the game goes back to sort of the 3rd or 4th edition game sizes for 2,000 points, which is a little closer to sort of 1,400, 1,500 for 7th edition terms. I found that sort of the sweet spot for getting games done quickly, and it keeps the most flavor without, where you have to make the really hard choices for lists. It'd be interesting to see.
I think people have to think of the new points not in comparison to what their points are now, but in comparison to what everything else is.
Yeah.
I think that's if you compare it to what they are now, you're just gonna get salty. I think.
Yeah, this is not like a 5th to 6th edition or a 6th to 7th edition. This is a 2nd to 3rd edition type of overhaul.
Almost like a new game. Almost.
It's very different.
Well, that's why they're calling it New Hammer, not 8th edition, right?
Age of the Emperor.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's a good point. But for all I care, a point could be. We could play 20-point games, and a unit could be 1 point. It's all arbitrary numbers. Don't fixate on it. The only thing you care about is that the game is playable, fun, and balanced.
Yeah, exactly. That's all that matters. Okay, now that vehicles have saves, how do you think a Knight's Ion Shield will work? Given that
they might not have
vehicle facings.
They won't have it.
I suspect they're just going to get reflected in a better save, ignoring rend.
Knight Ion Shield ignores rend of -2. Whatever.
Yeah.
How many points do you guys think Knights are going to have? How many wounds?
They said dozens. It would not surprise me to be around 30.
So a Dreadnought, to me, if you were to do a Power Rangers using Dreadnoughts to build a Knight Titan, you would need 5-6 Dreadnoughts because one would have to be the head.
Yep.
So
have
what's
you just
8
seen a
times
movie
6?
recently, Chris?
8 times 6.
6 times 8. Oh, it's 48 wounds.
I think it's
There you
going
go.
to be
48
45.
wounds.
45. That's my prediction.
We'll
I
see.
did not see the movie, but as a kid, I did have the whole toy. So
Yeah, the
And I
Megazord.
think my Mastodon's going to be 70 wounds.
Oh, God.
Okay, Chris, how many last cannons does that take? Go.
48 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8.
How many grab guns? One
I don't
grab gun.
One
even know what
grab
grab
gun.
is.
And it only needs to roll a single 6.
I'm excited because I do have 7 Knights now, so I would like to see the Knight Titans, even if they were a bit weaker, but being able to have more variety. Like right now, you're kind of tied. Like you can't take, you have to take 5 errants or 4 wardens and one of the combat ones. Like I would like to see them maybe more. I don't know, more useful in other builds and not so much kind of like a spammy thing, and maybe more variety in the Knights would be kind of cool.
I think it would be cool to see, sort of going to that centerpiece theme, is to see lists revolve around 1 or 2 Knights instead of taking 3 to 4 for a detachment kind of thing, right? Because right now taking 1 Knight is not exactly viable. They're too fragile. But if they're super beefy, but say they're 500 point equivalent, then maybe you will just take one. Because if you think about it, without D, Knights would be a lot more durable than they are right now.
I think you're going to see the Knight be like the splashing monster for like 400 points, 500 points.
Could be.
But it'd also be nice to be able to, like, go up against an army of knights and have all your bolters and be like, I can do something.
That's true. So that was actually one of the big complaints I got from someone who came to one of our tournaments a while ago, is that the reason he doesn't like 40k right now is he has games where he'll sit down and it's actually impossible for him to kill anything with his army. And granted, he doesn't run a super strong list, but it's really, really frustrating to come to an event, even if you're just there to play for fun, and get plopped down against someone and have absolutely, like, no way to deal with it. Like, sure, you can play the objectives and you can do that, but all of your toys are going to die and you're not going to scratch the other guy's stuff.
Yeah, that's frustrating. That's one thing that the Death Star's ruined about the game is I can't kill you. Like, your unit's invisible. I can't do anything, and that's the frustrating part about it. It's not like it's a cool combo, and people like Death Stars, like the look of it. Oh, one big unit, all these abilities, but it's like why am I even here? Like, literally, like I had somebody when I did that. I did a Screamer Star and Magnus, and I did the 2+ rerolling 1 bubble.
Yeah.
He said, "There's no point in me even rolling dice to
Yeah.
shoot you.
Yeah. It just slows things down.
Statistically, I do 1 wound on your Screamers. Like, there's no point in rolling it. Like,
Yeah.
and to be fair, he had a point, right? So I like that stuff can actually, like in AOS, everything dies. That's fun.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you might still lose. Like Jason and I got our asses beat on Warhammer TV, but we killed Archeon. Okay, so and that was a big deal. It was a big difference.
Exactly.
All right, now let's get to the 2 most pertinent questions. 1, can Pink Horrors summon? Yes, but they can only summon Empire Greatswords. 2, can Mango the Red summon Pinks? Let's go with yes.
Who's Mango the Red?
Mango the Red.
Oh, Magnus.
No, Mango. Mango the Red.
Mango the Red. You know, he's quite tropical.
He's the tropical version of Magnus. Then you've got Mongo the Red, which is Magnus' special brother. He doesn't let out of the house. All right. Do you think this is from Yoshi? Do you think GW will bring back or combine Hall of Heroes? I think no, because Frontline's taking the front seat on that one.
ITC, buddy. ITC. That's where it's at.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, if you look at a lot of sports, it is common for an independent entity to run like the rankings and the tournament system.
I'm pretty sure
some
that
of the
was
bias from
negotiated.
It, right?
Yeah, I think
I'm pretty sure that's been negotiated.
Since Warhammer World Events are using BCP now, I think we're going to see them feeding into it for official results, which is cool.
100%. I think it's only good. It's only good stuff will come from that.
Yeah, they've got some kinks to work out in their system, but if they've got the backing of someone like GW, I think they're gonna do really well.
Of course, yeah, oh yeah.
And then what do we got here from Jeff? What are TOs going to do with all the extra time they have on their hands, as they don't need to write FAQs or tourney packs?
Paint more models.
I'm going to paint models, and I'm going to get a massage. It's going to be great.
That's still not the most intensive part of doing the event. So.
No,
it's
terrain.
not, but it's so
busy.
nice. It'll be great to not have to quiz myself on a 150-page FAQ of Forge World rules just to run an event.
Now you might just need less staff, which is you need less refs. Like in Age of Sigmar, you need a ref for every 20 tables or 20 people. Sorry, like or more, because the issues just don't come up.
Yep.
Because it's answered, right?
But like when we ran Bloodbath last year, it was sort of me
hard.
one-man TOing 40k with 48 people. That was rough. That was really rough. But with AOS, what was cool is, I don't keep super up to speed on the game, but you were able to come over and ask me to help out with rules disputes. And because of how clearly this stuff is written, and the fact that it's designed to work for that kind of setting, it was really easy to just say, like, okay, I need to cross-reference these two things. How do they work together? Is there precedence? Yes, no, done. Whereas 40k, you need to look up 10 different friggin' rule books just to find out how things work.
That's the thing that kills me, is I walk around the event with my iPad, and 40k, I get 3 people to ask. That I go to a table last year at Capital City, and I was like, okay, I got to look in the rule book for the rules for this.
Yeah.
Doesn't say in there. Now I got to look in this codex, and like it would take me like 20 minutes sometimes to find all the relevant rules, and I'd be like, well, can you guys just move on, and we'll come back to it if it doesn't matter type thing, right?
Exactly.
But
so having all the rules free Like, this is the one huge advantage of having everything on the data slate is you have a single version of the truth, except when there are multiple versions like Terra.
And then there's yeah, but that's
That'll be
just a known
fixed.
issue.
That'll
That's
be
an old
fixed.
thing that should be removed. But the like it's better for us because then we can concentrate on getting the scores right,
Yeah.
getting the terrain better, making sure people are having fun, making sure that people are setting their stuff up and getting their votes in, and we can take all that time and just do better work with
exactly.
it. And with BCP, man, like I am confident running a 20-man tournament in a store on BCP of Age of Sigmar alone, like while playing.
While playing, that's the biggest thing, right? For events that size, like I run a lot of 40K events for like RTT size stuff, and I've been finding with more than I think 16 sort of the sweet spot. If there's more than 16 players, it's really not viable to play and TO with 40K right now. But with AOS or with rules that as streamlined as AOS, I'd have no concerns doing that at all. So.
Yeah, because you can just play, you can stop your game, answer the odd rules questions. Yeah. Everybody enters their own scores in BCP. Yeah. It auto does the matches, and then all you have to figure out at the end of the tournament is the overall and the soft scores, and because BCP does the rest.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be cool. And we have one last question here, also from Jeff. Will there be points cost for formations? And if so, will we see free stuff formations if you pay the points cost? Or will they do it the AOS way? Okay, yeah. And then we have another question.
No more free stuff.
I think free stuff is gone. I think they've learned their lesson.
And you pay for formations.
Yeah. I suspect if formations are there, it's going to be just like AOS where you pay
that's speculation, of course.
Yes.
I hope that there's no more free stuff. I think everything should be paid a price for.
Yeah.
And I think summoning is paid for as well.
I hope so. That would be huge. We'll find that out tomorrow, I hope. So that'll be big, because that'll be the psychic phase. So tomorrow being April 28th for those of you who are not listening to this live. And then the last question from Jeff, before we call it a night here, will they do it the AOS way where you buy 5 Marines and then have to buy 5 more? I think the answer to this is no. I don't know if it's been explicitly answered, but with everything they've said about the match play where you're buying individual upgrades, I can't see them doing it where you'd have to buy units in chunks too. That would be really counterintuitive.
But I like that about Age of Sigmar. I like that you buy a box, you play it. That's it. Like, they don't sell Paladins. Actually, that's a mistake. They do sell Paladins in boxes of 3, and they're only viable in 5s. But that's the only exception I could think of. Yeah. I like that. But
I like that in AOS they base stuff around the unit sizes. With that said, there's no reason they can't do that in 40K, and they basically do, right? Like, if you buy a unit of Tactical Marines, you've got a unit of Tactical Marines. It's not like you have to buy 4 boxes of them to get 1 unit. I don't like that in AOS because it really hurts on the min-maxing. Like, I was putting together a death list earlier today, and I wanted to find a way to scrape up an extra 20 points. And to do it, I had to pretty fundamentally change how everything would line up in the list. Whereas if I was able to buy individual models, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to drop 5 zombies. Problem solved.
Cool.
I would agree, Logan. It seems counterintuitive to allow you to add 2 points here for this gun, 5 points here for that gun. Yet you got to add chunks of units.
Yeah.
Because in AOS, if you're making your army, you got 2,000 points. You're 20 over, or you're 40 over, or you're 60 over. You got to remove whole chunks of units to get your list under 2,000. But then if you're also adding 2 points here and 3 points here and 8 points here, then that becomes crazy. So I suspect that you're right, that they're not going to make you add chunks of units.
Yeah. We'll find out soon, though. I imagine we're going to know all this in the next week or so.
So with that, it's been a long show, so we're going to have to call it a night. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for joining us, Scary. It was awesome having you on again.
Thanks a lot. It's been really fun, actually, hanging out with you guys, chatting lists and 40K.
Good
times. It's great having you, man. We enjoy what you also do for the community up in Barrie and abroad, because you travel quite a bit around Southern Ontario, so thanks for everything you do. With that, guys, thanks for listening. For feedback, you can email us, canhammer.podcast@gmail.com. You can go to canhammer.ca for more information. You can support us on patreon.com/canhammer. We'll let Scary plug his wares one last time.
Yeah, thanks a lot. You can always check me out at Skardcast on YouTube primarily. That's SKAREDCAST. Check out all the tacticals, battle reports, etc. And I am also on Patreon. But I just patroned your channel, guys.
Oh,
I feel
thank
that
you.
you guys are doing some fantastic stuff at the scout level.
Awesome.
So make sure you check out CanHammer. Go over to patreon.com and scrounge up $1 a month to help these guys out and help the content grow. We really appreciate it. And yeah, that's that.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks,
So with
everyone.
that, have a good one.